Thank you so much. Very good evening to all of you. Very good evening to all of you. Am I audible? Perfect. I see Ritu Arora, Nikasa chairperson of Amritsar branch. Extend warm welcome to all of you in this today's webinar on ISA exams, how to crack ISA exam. And I love to extend heartiest welcome for Charanjot Singh Nandaji, who is not present here and due to the technical glitches, he is not able to join along with Daya Nivasji. Before I would like to introduce Dr. Saurav Maheshwari ji, I would like to say 2-3 lines for Nandaji. Nandaji is a central council member. He is a central council member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. And he deliberately and with great effort, it's a great initiative of his part for creating this weekend webinars for the members' benefit. We are really thankful to Nandaji for taking this great initiative and inviting all the faculties across all India for the betterment of the members and the students. And he's the chairman of Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, along with Internal Audit Standard Boards of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He's a chairman of SAFA too. It's a huge profile. दीपक को दिया दिखाना बहुत मुश्किल होता है, हम सब जानते हैं. And we really don't want to waste the time. I would like to introduce Saurav Maheshwari ji, today's faculty. May I go ahead, Dr. Saurav Maheshwari ji?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. Dr. Saurav Maheshwari ji is educational strategist, national trainer, national awardee, author and poet, career and startup mentor, life coach, IS auditor, data analyst, political researcher, and if I go for his academician record, he is BE IT from Manipal University, BA Engineering, Literature and Economics from Kota University. He did MTech from IS. He did MTech in IS in ITT Delhi, MBA IS Management from IASE University, LLB from Kota University, ex-MBA Digital Market, IMT Ghaziabad, PhD from System Development and Data Analytics from Education Management, USA. Sir, आप इतना सारा कैसे पढ़ते हैं? I would love to ask, इतना सारा कैसे पढ़ते हैं, sir?
बस मैम हो गया. It's like in a flow.
That's great. And he's a director of WISE Consultants, independent external advisor of 21K Schools, Career Point University, Podar Institutions, Director Business Development, SARAS 3D ED Technical Private Limited, Startup Mentor, SDT University, Atal Community Innovation Center, National Trainer, ICI, having an experience of 11 plus years, more than 200 batches in more than 50 cities, and more than participants in his ISA classes is 11,000. With this, my words are short and his profile is very big. I don't know how he managed to study all this and how he managed to do the things. Sir, before you deliberate on the today's topic, first of all, I would like to ask, please advise and guide how you manage all these things simultaneously. It will be a great benefit to our members.
Ma'am, it's all time management. That is what I have came to know from my engineering faculties and from my mentors. That is the only thing which I'll try to do actually. That is, best thing is time management. Rest all things flows in your pocket if you are able to do your time perfectly managed out there.
Great, sir. All the best. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, participants, and thank you very much, ma'am, for introducing. I also welcome Amish, sir, who is the second faculty, who will be continuing with the further modules, which I'll be leaving from here. So, as we all know that we are here for revision, or you can say fast-track revision for visa, right? So, that is going to happen in July. If I'm not wrong, I think it's on 8th of July, the scheduled date for DCIT examination. So make sure that all of you are ready enough. So I'm very privileged to be a part of this institutions, and Nanda sir is putting up decent efforts in making sure that everybody will get their last minute preparation efforts and last minute preparation support from the faculties they have learned, or whatever, in the manner that the topics and the questions, the tricks and techniques must be there with you. So I'm without wasting much of your time. So directly come up to this particular session. So we are having very specific time, that is 1.5 hours, almost 90 minutes are with me. So in 90 minutes, we have to make sure that we should be more talking about what the IS audit is and how we'll be able to crack it. So just taking a couple of minutes of yours, that okay, you all are aware that you are doing DISA only for the purpose of getting that basic requirements of bank audits and what statutory requirements, whatever you have. But at the same time, from an engineer perspective, if you look like, I feel like there are a lot of opportunities which are there as an IS auditor or being a DISA qualified person. I do not take you as an IS auditor. I take you as a digital transformation consultant for the company, for the country. Fine. So I have stated few roles which can be played by you. And I'm sure that once you are there with DISA and you are getting into this IS audit perspective, we'll find out this particular field is almost having infinite opportunities. And doing something or the other from the list which is being put out here, and this list is not inclusive. You can add few more things to that. But I think future is of technology only, that you all know. And with the tools like ChatGPT, tools like Bard, and tools like Writer coming up, we are a lot of getting dependent on technology. So if it is technology dependent, tools are used in organizations, going for automation, maybe blockchain, maybe cloud computing, maybe artificial intelligence, maybe data analytics. So obviously, technical involvement is there. And sooner or later, I am sure that government or authorities will come up with certain compliances, even for private limited companies also, who are taking care of the data into the digital format, the processing into the digital format. So do not restrict yourself to only specific roles which are as of now defined, but look forward for a futuristic ways out in which you can involve yourself as a digital transformation consultant. Fine. For making and for taking the country on a safer zone or safer side of digitalizations, right? Anyway, so let's move forward. So we are here for DISA 3.0. And we'll be covering up around first 3 modules in a very nutshell and a fast manner. Although the presentation which I am having right now is having around 139 slides. So if you want, I can share this presentation for you for a quick review of all those things. This presentation also had somewhere around 90 questions. And those questions will give you a kind of real-time training or real-time assessment that whether you are prepared for DISA or not. We may not be able to cover up all topics out there, but let me try my best to cover up at least the basic topics which are connected to that. So these 3 modules are going to cover up around 52% of your entire DISA. Fine. So make sure that you are aligned in whatever I am saying. And do not take technology as a very alien subject and a tough thing. It is very easy. You just need to accept it as it is, right? Without getting into the technical aspects of it. You are a user, you are an auditor. So get into those shoes rather than getting into the shoes of a technical person. So module 1, which is related to information system audit process. Now, this particular module talks about what needs to be done and what are the ways out and what are the standards of auditing and what is the process of being an IS auditor, or whenever you are engaged with a company for doing an IS audit, how your engagement will come up, what is the scope of audit, what is the way in which you will be able to get those evidences out, what is the way to evaluate the evidences and making sure your reports and everything is accepted at the global level. So this is more of a practical angle that what needs to be done as an IS auditor when you're approaching any company or any authority for getting an IS audit. So this concept talks about what is actually computer systems. We all know computer system is not only computers or the devices. It talks about hardware. It talks about software. It talks about networking as well, because today without networking, it is not possible to have a device functioning independently. Obviously, it talks about some sort of data as well, because without data, system cannot work. And yes, we are talking about certain sort of security tools as well, or controls also, you can say that. So these are the 5 core components which makes this computer system as a system which can be used as an automation device in any organization. Fine. Now, when it comes to information, very specific, everybody takes that data when process become information, but I take data when process, and that too, it has to be meaningful, used to be in a timely manner, must be effective in decision making, must be effective in operation support management, must be understandable, must be serving your purpose. These all characteristics must be added to that, then only it becomes information. See, every data process may or may not be information, depending on whether it is relevant for you or not. And when an automation system is generating some or the other information for you in an automated mode using some sort of technology, that is known as what? Information system as a whole. And this information system can actually also be termed as a business process automation system. Because whatever we are doing, we are actually automating the business process. Now, whether it is sales, purchase, or orders, or financials, or attendance, whatever. So these are business processes. And almost every business process is now in a mode of getting automated, whether by softwares or whether by robots or whether by cobots. Fine, these are two terminologies which you will come up when you get into details of IT and all. So every business process is in a format of automation. We are using some of the other technical tools to automate it. So when any business process becomes automated, the system which we use for automation is what we need to audit or you need to audit. And audit should be from security side, audit from compliances side, audit can be from governance side, audit can be from performance side and all. So there is no single way out, or you can say one particular IS auditor may or may not be to do the entire IS audit. IS audit is a very broader, very huge field of study, right? But altogether, primarily purpose that why audits are required, the only reason is that it is risk-based audit. Fine, so risk is there. Risk is there from environment, risk is there from compliances, from competitors, from internet, from attackers, from malicious tools, from malicious insiders. So risk is there. So we are talking about risk-based audit. So whenever you talk about risk-based audit, you need to know what is risk and you need to know what is the risk universe. So everything which can go wrong for a computer system or for a business process automation system which can affect the business processing is known as risk. And entire risk, whether it is from physical side, environmental side, technical side, legal side, logical side, manpower side, hacker side, this all becomes a risk universe for an organization. So whatever we are doing, we are trying to make the system much secure. And as an IS auditor, primary responsibility of yours is to make sure gaps identification is to be there so that systems can be enhanced. Primarily from the risk angle, but also from angle of upgrading the system, from meeting the future requirements, from making it technically aligned, from making it future ready. These also comes as a part of it because these are also resulting, or these can also result into some of the other risk in the future. May not immediately or may not directly visible, but yes, if you are lagging behind the technology, your competitors are going ahead, that's a risk of existence. When you're not fulfilling the compliances, it becomes another risk, right? So it is always risk directly or indirectly. But the purpose is to make the system much secure, and that is what the IS auditor main role should be. At the same time, when you are doing audit, or any audit, fine, you know that there are certain audit risks connected to that. And I'm not somebody to tell you about what audit risks are, but yes, for a nutshell, it becomes a combination of three things, which is called inherent risk, right? Control risk and detection risk, right? And for making sure system is secure or not, we are going to put up controls. And in totality, entire controls can be termed as internal controls. Internal controls means what can be placed in, what can be implemented within the organization or by the organization on the automation tool, around the automation tool. Fine, because audit is not only of the computer, it is around the computer also, right? So we have to talk about entire controls. So I am just putting up what exactly the entire controls are so that you will be able to know that what we are talking about. So entire internal controls are actually a combination of three things. So it is general controls and IS controls. In IS control, there are IT general controls, right? Maybe your firewall calls here, your anti-malware software comes here, your application controls like input controls, output control, processing control comes here. The general controls talks about physical control, environmental controls, compliances and all. So in totality, whatever we are doing to make the entire automation is a secure thing, that is known as internal controls. And all the controls, whatever we are going to put up, we'll majorly classify those into three things: preventive control, detective controls, and corrective controls, right? And I'm sure the definition of these are pretty much well known to you. So going back, you will be implementing, or all the standards of auditing you are aware of it are also applicable on the IS audit as well. Fine, because when it comes to the roles and responsibilities, the auditor's engagement, the quality controlness, the considerations of laws and regulations, fine, how rigorous documentation needs to be prepared, what is audit materiality, fine. All these things as a standard are applicable here also. So do not confuse yourself that you need to do something completely new. You have to do whatever you are doing. It's just the system has changed from paper-based mode to a computer mode. So you should be slightly aligned towards some technical tools like finding evidences in a technical manner, evaluating evidences. And apart from standards of auditing, you may have to implement some other global accepted system standards like COBIT 2019 framework, or ISO compliances or ISO standards. You may also have to implement ITIL and all. So there are multiple compliances and standards which comes up from the IT side, along with Information Technology Act and Personal Data Protection Acts and all. So if alignment of these things is there, you are just trying to implement the same similar aspects from the technical perspective. So all auditing standards will be a part of your IS audit as well. A couple of audit standards have been asked by the institute in the examination as well. So I'm sure you are well aligned with that, and you know what exactly is SA 300, SA 220, SA 320 and all. SA 402 is also very important, which comes up here. So also make sure that SA 402 should be known to you. Apart from that, there is a framework called ITAF. Now, this is something which is asked very frequently by the institute as well, and you must know that Information Technology Assurance Framework is a framework given by ISACA. Right, and this particular framework talks about three series, that is 1000, 1200, 1400 series, and this series gives certain standards, predefined standards for an IS auditor to refer them and to imply them whenever you are going for IS audit. So this 1000 series is talking about general standards for IS audit. 1200 series talk about performance standards, even for processes, for devices, for servers, for individual. All performance related things are there already predefined, or you can say pre-stated in ITF 1200 series. And then reporting standards, so that whenever you are preparing a report, if referred to these standards, your report becomes globally accepted. If you say that like 1400 1.1 is the standard which you are using for preparing this particular report, or this particular clause is connected to that, it becomes much acceptability of your report, and they becomes globally aligned with the market as well. So only reason why we are talking about all this is that when it comes to IT audit, the system is not being confined only enough to be used within the premises of the companies. Today, almost every system is being aligned to internet, getting into e-commerce market, allowing people to connect to the systems from anywhere in the world. So these kind of assurance framework or these kind of auditing frameworks are actually very important, so that other companies and other countries or other organizations in the global market will be able to accept your system as a safe and reliable system. So will be able to accept your IS audit report as a authenticate IS report, and they have no problem and no challenges in aligning their systems and their processes with your systems, right? Today, it's all data transformation from system to system with very less of human involvement. So this can only happen when you are meeting up the global standards and frameworks. So these particular frameworks or many more which are stated by either ISACA or multiple other bodies which are there working into IS field. Fine. Knowing them, applying them will make your systems more acceptable in the global market. Fine. Now, when you're talking about auditing in the compromised environment, very simple, we are majorly talking about risk-based audit. That has to be the interest of ours, because until unless people, the organizations are being worried about the continuity of the business, fine, worried about somebody hacking or corrupting the business, worried about their hardware assets and intellectual properties, worried about the data privacy and all, they will not fall into this audit domain, or they will not be agreeing to get into audit. But these risks are by default there in the market. You just need to make sure those risks should be visible. And for that, I think you all are aware about a concept called VAPT, that is vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. This will tell, or this will give a complete risk sheet or gap sheet to the management to believe that yes, IS audit is important to cover up all these vulnerabilities and penetrations possibilities into the system, which can be used by an attacker or which can be exploited by any insider as well to get the system misused. And for us, the primary aspect becomes in making the CIA, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability of systems very intact, right? And the data, the information, whatever we are flowing into the systems or outside the systems or over the network or inside the company, you need to make sure that every information, every data should be confidential, should not be tampered by anyone, and should be available as and when required only to those individuals who are authorized to get into that. And for doing IS audit, there are three basic aspects which you need to actually talk on. That is evidence collection techniques, for which there are multiple evidence collection tools and techniques which you may be knowing, like gas tools, SAS tools, or maybe certain techniques like SCARF technique or snapshot technique or ITF technique, which can be used for evidence collection. So we have already predefined tools, and you can use multiple tools for evidence collection. For evidence evaluation, you are doing DISA, and you might be aligning yourself with multiple information system auditing standards all over the world. So this will give you a clear-cut understanding how to evaluate this evidences and how to compare them with what is proposed to happen and what is actually in the system. And there are reporting formats and reporting templates are already available. So for me, I don't feel like IS audit is a typical task which cannot be handled by you as a chartered accountant. You just need to align these three things with you, and these three things are not rocket science. A technical knowledge and how to implement the technical knowledge using some technical tools is what is required, right? So anyway, let's talk about the phases of audit. So if you summarize the entire module into a single slide, these are the phases of audit which are stated out there in the module, which starts from what are the objectives which needs to be set for auditing. This needs to be done by the governance body of the company, or you can say topmost of the management. Actually, topmost of the management becomes a slightly slang technical word. The governing body becomes much authenticated, much relevant word today. So that needs to be said by the governance body, that what they are expecting from the IS auditor or after the audit has been done. So objective needs to be set. After objective, you can expect the organization to release a request for proposal so that they can actually invite multiple IS auditors or multiple people who are capable in IS audit to bid for it. And once the proposal is there, you bid for it. That is a response from request for proposal, and then the auditors are finalized. Now, once auditor is finalized, then there is a drafting of audit charter. There is an audit engagement letter. Fine, you have to understand the business, and for understanding the business, you refer to a document called business case. Please make sure you are aware of this terminology. Business case gives you a complete understanding that what exactly the business is, why the automation has been done, what was the processes which was expected into that, what are the conditions like financial constraint, technical constraint, business constraints, operational constraints, legal constraints, and all. Everything will be there in the business case. So make sure if you are able to understand and review this business case, the entire understanding of business will be there with you. Then obviously the communication of audit will be there. This will give you a clear understanding of the technical constraints, your times, your other things which are required for auditing purpose. Then you may refer to certain sort of quality assurance process and standards for getting things audited. It may be majorly in India, if you talk about it, becomes an ISO framework that they want ISO 27000, ISO 22301, ISO 31000, or some of the other quality assurance framework and all for auditing. Then scope of audit is finalized. Then obviously audit planning you do. Then evidence collections and preservation of the evidences needs to happen. And this becomes an important thing because any evidences collected from a very sensitive systems, if moving out of the organizations or if being leaked out, can hamper the credibility of the system. So obviously it's not only evidence collection, you have to talk about evidence preservation also. Then obviously you have to evaluate the evidences from all possible angles, then becomes a documentation part for it and the audit report. And this all process you have already done majorly in your project report, whatever you have submitted during your ISA batches. Fine. So that audit report talks about what was the business case. Then there was certain sort of requirements for getting the audit done. The organization structure you have studied. You have put up the evidence collection techniques. Then you have made some sort of risk control matrix for that. Right. And then you have suggested what the remedial measures needs to be done to cover up the risks which are identified by you from a particular angle. It may be from system development, it may be from migration, it may be from audit for VAPT, it may be from e-commerce side, it may be from system development and all. So angle could be different, and those angles are there stated that is the scope of audit. Make sure you should be restricted enough and you should be aligned yourself enough to the scope of audit. Although if you feel like there are certain connected parts, fine, you can give reference if you find out any issues, but you are not authorized and you are not permitted to get into the audit of anything else beyond the scope of audit primarily, right? Then there are certain tools, as we have already discussed. You need to have certain CAD tools or audit tools and techniques that needs to be applied or implemented by you for collecting the right evidences. So you can certain general audit tools which are readily available in the market. You can create certain specialized tools for a specific system. Those are not specialized audit softwares. And obviously, these softwares will not be working on any other systems, and you are not supposed to use these tools on any other system also if they're specifically made for a system. Right? Although cost and technicalities of these SaaS tools will be much higher, but if it is required, there is no second thought that funds can be implemented on that. So GAS tools are readily available. That is known as generalized audit software tools. SaaS tools are specifically made for a particular information system or an ERP or like core banking systems and all. And there are certain utility tools as well, which includes your log files, fine, which includes your firewall log or your system log or your activity log or your printer log, right, or your process log. All these things can be helpful for you for making sure that you are using the right tools. Fine, and some tools are readily available within your operating systems and comes up with the tools as well or the application software we are using, and you can take those tools as well for collecting your right evidences. Apart from that, there are certain techniques which can be used for evidence collection. So I'm sure you are aware about snapshot, integrated test facilities, continuous and intermittent simulations, SCARF system control audit review files, and embedded audit modules. All these techniques can be used, and every technique has its own framework of doing things. So snapshots is actually collecting some sort of recording evidences of the transaction which are moving, fine, from input to output. Integrated test facility primarily talks about the dummy data which can be there. And just mark my words, majorly these techniques should be embedded into the systems. Why embedded? Because if they are add-on, then there is a possibility that these techniques can be stopped and evidence collections can be hampered. So these techniques, if are embedded into the application system, it becomes very easy for collection of these evidences, become seamless, and the ISO auditor will have no fabricated, no tampered evidences. And again, one of the important thing, any evidences collection or any log files, nobody in the organization should have the permission to edit those files and evidence collections done by any tools and techniques. Okay, so any tampering into that makes the auditing by default a flawed auditing. And as an ISO auditor, you must always make sure that evidences are collected by the system and no human involvement should be there as much as possible. And tampering for sure should be avoided. That means you have to check whether these log files are having any sort of editing or modification possibilities by anyone. Okay. Then let's talk about what are the cyber frauds. Now today it becomes very obvious. Almost everybody of you is listening or reading or hearing some of the other cyber frauds happening almost every day, including your AIMS issue, which has come up just a couple of months back, 3 months back, including your Sun Pharmaceutical issue, which was there around 8 months back. Every bigger company or every authoritative company is facing some of the other issues. So obviously, the problems are there. The market is by default huge enough for cybercrime. And just to tell you, it was just a random assumption that the entire market of cyber fraud in India is going to be around 250 million within next couple of years. So that's a big market. So if threats are there, risks are there, obviously the possibility of controls and the needs of auditing is there, and therein you can put your feeds into the ISO auditor shoes very easily. So you might slightly need to be aware about what is the evidence collection and evidence presentation techniques. What are the Information Technology Act, which tells you about what are the flaws, what are illegal activities, find what are the powers and authorities for an ISO auditor, certain bodies. Fine, all these things are primarily known to you. It's very easy. I do not want you to remember all this right now, but maybe after clearing DISA, studying few case studies will give you a clear perception that how these things are happening and what is the mechanisms that can be used by an ISO auditor to cover up and make your systems or make your organization system as safe as possible, right? So this covers up module 1, which was majorly talking about IS audit perspective. So the entire slide which I've just told you, that is majorly been out there. Although there is something which is related to risk is also there in this particular module, which I feel like entire risk part will be covered up by Thakkar sir in a collective mode, because module 5 is majorly about risks and controls and all. And therein you can talk about the entire risk in a very collective and concise manner, right? So let's talk about module 2. Module 2 primarily talks about two things. One is GRC framework and one is continuity of the business. GRC, as you all are aware about, it's very specific concept, that is governance, risk and compliances. Let's talk about first word, which is governance first. So in governance, what exactly we are talking about? Governance is enterprise governance for us. We are talking about obviously from the organization perspective. And for us, enterprise governance falls into two categories, or maybe in the global perspective, that is corporate governance and business governance. Now, in a very simple terminology, I'll try to explain you that was the difference between both of them. That is, corporate governance is primarily about protecting the business, and business governance is about growing it. So something is talking about protecting, that means policies, guidelines, protocols to make sure that system is under standard framework of working and nothing is going in the system which can result out into some risks and some issues. And when it comes to business governance, the primary purpose of business governance is to grow the business, is to make sure your sales, your performance, your presence is growing every time. Correct? So corporate governance related to policies and procedures set in place to ensure business corporate effectively within the laws. And when it comes to business governance, it is related to operations and talks about efficiency. So efficiency is measurable, effectiveness is not. So when you talk about effectiveness, you are always talking about the topmost body, which is governing body, to make sure policies, guidelines are there. And when you are talking about business governance, you are talking about management who is involved into operations and making sure every process is resulting out in much better outcome as previously been done. And every time you are learning with your mistakes, learning with your experiences, and performing better and better. So it's very simple, very clear-cut differentiation or correlation between corporate governance and business governance. And in collectivity, both of them are actually enterprise governance, because enterprise needs both the things, protecting also and growing as well. Correct? So in the corporate governance, technically you can refer to a word called conformance, and business governance related to performance. Correct? And whatever we are talking about, whether it is enterprise governance from COBIT 4.1 perspective, or enterprise governance from COBIT 5 perspective, or from COBIT 2019 perspective, all these things falls into three basics, or you can say there are three basic pillars which talks about this. And the terminology, which is ITG earlier, GIT in 2005, or sorry, COBIT 5, and EGIT in today's COBIT, all talks about almost a similar thing, that today as IT has become an integral part of the business, so managing IT and managing business should not be treated separately. So you have to integrate both the things, as today almost every process is being IT governed. You talk about bank, you minus IT, you minus internet, you minus devices, IT bank employee will not be able to do anything. You talk about reservation systems, your IRCTC, you talk about reservation systems of our hotels and all, almost everything is IT governed. So minus IT is not possible. So let's integrate the IT, and that is the reason the terminology called EGIT, that is enterprise governance of IT, has coined by ISACA through COBIT 2019, and making sure that IT and business going simultaneously, and enterprise governance without IT is not possible. So it becomes enterprise governance of IT. Now, when you talk about this, there are three basic pillars, you can say that, which talks about this, whether it is ITG, GIT or EGIT. There are three basic things. What are the three basic things? One is ensure benefit realization, that whatever you are doing from the IT perspective in the company, the benefit to the business, the benefit to the stakeholders must come out. And again, referring to COBIT 2019 and COBIT 5 framework, that talks about every stakeholders must get benefit out of it. Every stakeholder's concerns and every stakeholder's interest must be taken care of. Correct? So ensures benefit realization should be there, and this realization should be there with almost every stakeholders. Right? So that is related to value creation. This is the first pillar. Second pillar is optimization, optimal use of resources. Correct? That means your performance should be as best as possible. Right? So almost every process, every device, every machine should be getting maximum benefit. Right? So resource optimization, whether it is IT resources or non-IT resources, it has to be there. And today, let's not talk about non-IT. Everything is IT supportive today. Fine, if you are having a HVAC system in your AC room, which is just supporting the temperature to be controlled, the AC, humidity to be intact, that is also important for making sure your server is performing perfectly. You all are aware about that every server room is installed with certain AC and certain devices which are making the entire environment in a very standard manner. So that is also supportive. So it's IT or IT supportive assets is the thing called non-IT assets. Today almost is IT and IT supportive. So resource optimization from all these things has to be there. And last is entire risk must be in a very mitigated manner and optimized manner. You should be able to mitigate and optimize the risk in the best possible manner. Now, what is best possible is not standard for all. Fine. Every organization has an appetite, has a capacity to digest the risk. Beyond that, it has to be mitigated in whatever best possible manner is. This can be specific in the terms of acceptance level. So every organization has an acceptance level that is called risk acceptance level. And whatever the risk which is there in the company, or whatever the residual risk which is coming out in the company, should fall under the acceptance level. That means if the risk, as an ISO auditor, if you are going for a risk audit and you have analyzed the entire risk of an organization and you feel like whatever risk it is coming up is this, and then you compare this risk with acceptance level, you feel like the risk which is there is above the acceptance level, then another effort needs to be played by you to put up the right controls, suggest the right controls to the management to make it below the acceptance level. So this level, if rightly been said, the role of an ISO auditor is to keep risk always below the acceptance level, and that is what the optimization of risk or risk mitigation strategy is all about. And this has to be aligned with the security policies of the company, with the governance intentions of the company, with the constraints from technical side, financial sides of the company. Is that clear? So entire governance aspects needs to be taken care of, and ISO auditor has the responsibility to make sure that policies, processes, operations of an organization, risk in the company, must be there at an optimal level, and you should be able to create values for all stakeholders. And if any stakeholder is not getting the value out there, that means I as auditor should point that out, and management has to think from that angle as well. Okay. Now, when you are going for these kind of implementation, whether it is ITG, GEIT or EGIT implementation, there is a very systematic process for doing so. And that process has been defined in your module also with 8-step process, which starts from why we need to go for IT. Now, every organization should not jump into IT just for the sake of competition or just for the sake that everybody is doing it. It's not a mob approach. It has to be your aligned approach. Every organization may have a different requirements, may have a different constraints, may have a different processing and a different set of customers and stakeholders. So you must understand that desire to change must be there. And this desire should be strong enough that management should be interested in devoting money, energy, time, and efforts into developing that automation processes, securing that automation processes, putting up efforts in securing those automation processes and all. So this desire to change should be very specific. Once this desire to change is okay and the management feels like, no, we have to do it. It's very similar to that when you go for banking operations. So now in suddenly 2002, almost every bank has gone for automation. It becomes a necessity because the way the customers are increasing, the way the banking operations are increasing, it becomes very impractical for a smaller bank to operate entire operations in a manual mode. Fine, and customers need certain sort of services almost every time, like cash disbursement, cash deposit, like fund transfer the funds in the emergency note to your parents, to your kids, or to maybe your business organizations and all. And earlier it was completely dependent on branch banking, that you have to be there in the bank physically and get these things done. And these are holding us to expand the business operations and get this aligned to the global market. So that was so much desire to change that bank and RBI has put on an effort in drafting of the policies and developing these kind of automation tools like Finacle and all for getting things done. So this desire to change should be so big enough that effort should be proportionate to that. Then obviously once you've desired for it, you have to formalize and implement a right IT governance process. Because if the governance process is not rightly being done, if the framework is not rightly being chosen, then whatever you are doing from the IT perspective without any set framework and guidelines, you get into dead end side. And from here involves the auditor role. Because auditor has to be aligning the IT processes and make sure that every needs should be aligned with the IT process. And you might have read it or you might be talking about it. I'll be taking this presentation to that level, wherein we'll be using some sort of DevOps tools to make sure that every requirements of development team should be meeting up with the requirements of business operations, right? So then you have to set a right IT structure, organization structure, which involves multiple people from the IT angle. Some new change management process will also be required. Some new roles and responsibilities will also be there in the company for existing individual, and some new employees will also be there in the company from the IT perspective to make it happen. So your entire implementation team, which includes the development team, operation teams, compliances team from IT perspective, should be a part of it, right? So this needs to be framed. Once this is there, then you have to communicate everything to all stakeholders so that everybody should be aligned to that, and their new roles and responsibilities must be known to them. Once that is there, then you can actually align what is the budget, how we are going forward for automation. So see, every automation cannot be a overnight automation. Fine, every automation is a systematic process that you have to do automated certain critical processes today. Few processes will be automated after 6 months, after 10 months. Till date also, since 2000, the bank is in a process of automation. And every year you can see, or every quarter you can see new and new processes are added to the automated mode. And the customers and individuals are getting benefits of doing online bankings and non-branch banking facilities just by devices. Today, ATMs are also able to do a lot of things. Even your online banking systems gives you a lot of facilities, which were not there 5 years, 10 years back, right? So that means your portfolio for IT, your portfolio for processes being automated is being gradually expanding. Fine, and this needs to be there. And every operations, every implementation should be performance measured. That means measuring the performance is very important, just to make sure that expectations of the customers and responses on the system should be right enough. And this is also important from the security point of view, because any delayed processing will result into holding the data in between, right, during the process and on the public network. And that becomes much possible for an attacker to intervene into the network and sniffer into the network and get the access to data. So performance, like how and what is the time. And that is the reason when you are doing certain sort of processing, if the processing is not being done in a specific timeline, it get deferred. Fine, you say that no, it was the server was not responding or the payment was not being transferred, please reinitiate it out. That is the reason that performance management system is required to make sure that where to cut and where to complete. Okay. Keep on adding up new approaches, because as automation is going on, as technological advancements is going on, you all know that you cannot just live with the technology which was developed in 2000 in 2023. From Google to Ola and Uber, to your IRCTC, to your Make My Trip, to your banking operations, you always see new and new approaches or new and new tools are always being added. New controls are being added, new features are being added to make it more comprehensive, more robust, and more acceptable by the user. Right? And make sure whatever you are doing, you should be doing it risk-free. So sustainability has to be there. Your monitoring has to be there. Because if you have put enough control today, tomorrow there may be some or other breaches or some other ways out in which the attackers will be able to breach your control. So whenever an IS auditor or automation things are being involved, it is a continuous process. It is not a process wherein you can hold and you can sit back. Fine, it has to be a continuous process of monitoring, continuous process of sustainability, continuous process of risk management, and continuous process of embedding new approaches and accepting new technologies to make the systems more acceptable to your all stakeholders and customers. So this is a systematic process of ITG or GIT implementation. I think you all must be aware of it. So a lot of questions can be asked from it. So all these things which I have marked can play a very important role into understanding certain keywords for you. And just a small trick at this point of time, that whenever you are reading down a question in the question paper or reading down the concepts in the module, make sure the keywords must be identified by you. Make sure you are highlighting them and you are keeping those keywords into mind. Because as it's an objective paper, I do not want and nobody wants to cram up the entire topics. Logic is very important. Identifying keywords is important. If the logic of technology is there with you, logic of auditor is there with you, these are the two logics which are required. Plus, if you are able to identify the keywords in the question, in the text, or in the options, you will be able to map it out. And once that thing will happen, I think DSA is not that tough exam, which is becoming a nightmare for you or troublesome for you or bottleneck for you to clear it out. Okay, so make sure logic from two angles, IT side and auditor side must be there, along with understanding the keywords. If these two things are known to you, I don't feel there is any problem that 100% results cannot come up in IS audit examinations. Okay, fine. Now, what are the GRC framework? COBIT 2019 is something which is very detailedly and deeply explained in your module. This is one of the framework. And COBIT frameworks, if implemented perfectly in the organizations, give multiple benefit to the organization and can help organizations of all size and all types into improving a lot of things, into effectively doing the operations, into increasing your operational excellence, into mitigating and managing your risk to a maximum level, into getting the maximum benefit out of the systems, and at the same time implementing the compliances, rules, regulations, and agreements as well. So if perfectly implemented, you can get multiple benefits from COBIT. But how to implement? But for implementing, you have to understand what the COBIT framework is all about. So COBIT framework talks about basic two domains. One is governance domain and one is management domain. Governance domain has one element into it that is called EDM, that is evaluate, direct, and monitor element. And management domain has actually four elements to that, which is APO, align, plan, and organize. PIA, that is build, acquire, and implement. DSS, this is deliver, support, and services. And MEA, that becomes monitor, evaluate, and assess. I do not want you to remember all these in detail, but just making sure that governance domain has EDM, that is evaluate, direct, and monitor, and management domain has four these things, and just knowing the full form of it is good enough at this point of time for DSA clearance. Getting into detail of it is required, but not as of now for your practical perspective. And for all this, for covering all this, there are actually 40 high-level processes which are defined, which actually calls about EDM 01 or APA 01 or BIA 01 or DSS 05 or MEA 02. All these processes, if or high-level process have been taken care of, you will be able to manage your entire automation system or business process system in a very effective manner. And if these 40 high-level processes are being secure, performance-wise, perfectly being managed, compliances-wise being taken care of, that is what the COBIT implementation is, COBIT 2019 implementation. So taking off these 40 high-level process is what is required, but those 40 processes are not as of now in your course. Just make sure two domains, governance domain and management domain, and the elements of governance domain and elements of management domain must be known to you. That's it, right? And for implementing all this, there are 6 principles which directly, indirectly, you can check it out whether you are implementing or not. That is making sure that every stakeholder's value should be there. Your information system is, if not providing any stakeholder with the right value, and if any stakeholder is at the risk part, is not accepting the systems, is being tethered, is not being considered, that means it is not COBIT 2019 implementation, or else you can say it is not a GRC implementation at all. Then you have to talk about holistic approach, that is in totality, and the futuristic approach. No part no process, no angle of an information system or your business process should be outside the GRC framework, or you can say COBIT 2019 framework. That becomes a holistic approach. Today, when you talk about technology, it is changing fastly. So you cannot have one policies which has been made in 2010, 2015, or 2020, which are applicable today as well. So you have to have a dynamic governance system so that policies can be changed in very dynamic manner. And I think everybody of you will coincide with me that in 2019, none of the organization or very few of the organization have work from home policy. Now today, almost every organization has work from home or hybrid policy. The job scenarios have changed. How? Because the governance system has become dynamic or needs to be dynamic to accept the today's changing scenarios and make the systems much aligned to requirements. So that becomes dynamic governance. That is keep on modifying the policies and frameworks of policies on a regular basis and make it more acceptable and adaptable to the market scenarios. Then comes making sure that your governance and management are completely distinctive to each other. And that is why it's important that we have set up these two domains, that somebody who is making up the policies should be completely differentiated from the team which is implementing the policy, implementing things, or on an operation side. So development and operations of policies, or development of policies and operation on policies, must be completely separated so that no overlapping is there, and that is what is the safe zone of site. Correct. So this is what is being mentioned in making sure that one of the principle of COBIT talks about separating governance with management. Then, as we have already discussed with you, that COBIT 2019 framework or any GRC framework is not a rigid framework. It is a very acceptable, very tailored framework which can be modified to all size and all type of the organization. So make sure whenever you are implementing COBIT, you are assessing each and every organization from its own individual mirror, and then only trying to make this COBIT framework suitable for them in what kind of policies are required, what kind of governance model, what kind of compliances to be implemented on that, and what are the risk and control matrices to be prepared on it. So whenever you are doing so, make sure you are only aligned to one particular organization, and any copy pasting of any GRC model is not accepted or is not going to give you a right result. And that's actually not the auditor's role. And make sure whenever you are implementing it end to end. That means entire processes must be taken care of, if not immediately, but in a gradual manner. So end-to-end governance model has to be there. So if these 6 principles are being indirectly or directly being tested, that whether you are implementing it or not, I think that's a very easy way out to check the effective implementation of GRC, and typically talking about COBIT 2019 framework, right? And for again doing so, you have 7 components, and 7 components, if need to be learned, fine. Although there is no 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, these are the 7 principles components which can be taken care of. I'll give you a small way out to learn them out. That make sure that first should be every organization should have right policies and principles and procedures in place. So once these principal policies are in place, the second thing needs to be done is that you have to define a process for executing a policy. Now, if the processes are not defined, then everybody might be developing their own process, which is going to give you another level of risk. So why principle? That is the topmost thing. What needs to be done? This is what needs to be done. This is how it needs to be done. So how talks about processes so that it becomes very standard. Now, it hardly matters how many organization offices you are having, how many employees you are having. If processes are well defined and single standard process, then everybody will following the same process for implementing. Then once the processes are there, you need to make sure who is going to execute these processes. That is only talking about the structure, that is the post in the organization. I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about post. So organization structure may be having multiple posts, like from strategy committee to steering committee to DA to DBA to chief security officer to chief technology officer, right? To maybe a tester in the system, or maybe quality assurer or document individual. So every post should have specific roles and responsibilities connected to that. And the person who is that at a particular post must be doing what? Doing things in a very culture, ethics, and behavior manner. That is how they have to perform. Fine. So what needs to be done? How it needs to be done? Who has to do it? And in what manner? Right? In what manner? Once this particular thing is being said, that is everybody is working in certain culture, ethics, and behavior manner, which is positive towards the organization, which is generating some or the other value to the company, then obviously you can talk about that whatever they are generating is information. That is valuable outcome. If they are doing in a particular manner, obviously the valuable outcome should be generated, and that valuable outcome should be treated as a information. And then for generating information, you can talk about we need to have supportive infrastructure, services, and application. Fine. So that is what supportive thing. Correct. So right services, right infrastructure, right application, right tool, right ecosystem should be there. Fine. So every information can be automated, or every information can be streamlined on an automation model with the supportive tools. And then for working on these tools, you need people with the required skills and competencies. Right. So last come manpower resources. So I'll repeat what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, who will do that, in what manner to generate certain valuable outcome with certain supportive tool and with the required manpower and all. If you are able to understand this, this is actually talking about a very holistic approach of implementing, and these 8 components are giving a clear-cut understanding of governance model. Okay. Apart from that, you have ISO standard, ISO framework in your module, and primarily ISO 27000 is there. ISO 27000 talks about 14 controls, and the list which is mentioned in pictorial format downside is talking about those 14 controls. In these 14 areas have been taken care of from all cyber side, physical side, environmental side, compliances side, right? I think the system will make very much secure. So if you are not following COBIT, that's okay, but you can implement ISO 21001 for making the system secure enough. So this is actually a security framework from ISO. If implemented perfectly, it will give you an assurance that your system is decently secure in whatever best possible manner you are working into, and in whatever best possible constraints and technological framework you are working. Okay. So just remember 2001 is correct. And similarly, you have ISO in your module. There is one more thing, ISO 12207, which is what? A system development framework. That is SDLC, which will be applicable in module 3. We will be talking about just 10 minutes from now. So these are the certain ISO standards. I just want to remember these typical words, numbers as well, and correlate them with particular framework or which particular standard or which particular area they are actually considering. Just aligning yourself with that will make you good enough from examination angle. Right? Then there will be risk management framework, which Thakkar sir will be taking care of it. And he will be talking about a lot of risk areas and how risk needs to be managed, what are the controls to be taken care of, and how these environmental controls like physical controls, logical controls, or administrative controls are going to be implemented. And with it, he will be talking about the systematic process of risk management also, which is known as ERM. Okay, so I'm leaving this particular thing to him. Then let's talk about compliances. Again, let me repeat, we are talking about GRC framework. G we have discussed. C we are going to discuss. R, module 4 and 5, sir will be taking care of it. So compliances, as we already know, there are a lot of rules and regulations standard made by certain government bodies and authorities on the regular basis to make the entire IT systems or the technological framework safe enough. So whenever you are implementing GRC framework, make sure the compliances applicable should also be taken care. So Information Technology 2000 amendment in 2008 is going to be your base for it. Personal Data Protection Bill, find general data protection regulations by EU. Apart from that, there are multiple other frameworks as well, which are released by different bodies and different organization time frame. Make sure you are implementing those and checking those things as well for making the information system and the methodologies in the company to be completely compliant enough. And any non-compliances should not come up from the IT side. Right? What could be the successful GRC implementation? So if a successful implementation of GRC will happen, I think these are the benefits which are visible to you. Reduction in errors, reduction in failures, reduction in illegal or non-compliances areas. Your overall time in processing will improve. Find your streamline the processes will happen. You will be completely saving your time in reporting as well. So whatever the benefits you can expect are there with proper implementation of GRC. And if you read certain case studies in a very thorough manner, I think you will be able to correlate that companies who have not implemented GRC and after implementation of GRC, there is a lot of cost saving, there is a lot of control saving, there is a lot of streamlining of processes, and redundancy has completely eliminated in them. So systematically, I think this is what needs to be done by an IS auditor in any IS audit. Fine. Apart from that, as we have talked about performance management, so in any kind of performance management from IT perspective, let's take care you are setting up the goals. And goal setting should not be only from IT, but also from non-IT perspective, because in totality, they are actually building up your entire automation model. So whether it is any process, any policy, or any employee, or any networking side as well, or any device also, you have to set the goals from all possible angles. In your module, if you read, there are certain goals which are stated, but the list is completely non-exhaustive. You can keep on adding to that. And by default, that will tell you that these are the areas in which goal setting is required. But when you are setting up the goals, you have to set what? KPIs, which is key performance indicators. And every process will have certain risk or key risk indicators as well. So KPIs and KRIs, if being properly set out, fine, you will be able to evaluate each and every process, each and every areas from risk side as well, and in terms of bare minimum, baselining requirements as well. So KPI, which is key performance indicators, and KRI, which are key risk indicators, needs to be set for every process so that you know that who is the owner, who is the custodian, and what are the parameters under which each and every process needs to be evaluated from quality perspective, and each and every process needs to be evaluated from risk perspective, so that any alarming needs, if they are related to occurring a risk or not meeting up the performance, should be there well in time, and you should be able to cover up the systems without any bigger disaster happening. And for doing so, and for setting up the parameters and evaluating a performance, you can take help of balanced scorecard approach, which is one of the very standard approach globally accepted. Take care of it. And there are 4 parameters, as you might already be discussing. I think this was there in your costing as well in detailed manner during a CA final level. That is, there are 4 angles, which is customer, financial, internal business process, and learning and growth. Right. So financial angle, you know that every financial investment should yield out in cost benefit analysis for the company, and every investment should yield out certain benefit which are visible from all stakeholder perspective. Internal business processes should get mature with time. Fine, and people and customers should be able to internalize every process from the automation side. You should be able to put everything in such a manner that with time you are able to learn, and growth should be there in terms of outcome, in terms of maturing the processes, in terms of making the system much risk-free. And every customer, whosoever is there connected to you, must be getting some values, and those values should also be increasing with time to come up. So if these 4 angles or these 4 dimensions of balanced scorecard approach are being taken care of, I think it's clear-cut indication that you are managing the performance of your system in effective manner. And let me tell you, this scorecard approach is applicable from the IT perspective as well, and from non-IT also. So although it was developed long back when IT was not there, it's completely there on the IT. Because today, again, telling you that we are not separating IT with the business. Every IT investment you are making is completely aligned to the business process. So it is EGIT, enterprise governance of IT, wherein IT is not an separable part. It is an inseparable part, non-separable part for any organization. Correct? So this was related to GRC. Now let's talk about the second part of this particular chapter, which is related to BCP, business continuity planning. Now, before going forward, we need to understand what exactly are the areas of, or maybe the key terminologies. So you might be aware about what exactly is BCP and DRP. So continuity plan and disaster recovery plan. So DRP is a subset of BCP, which should not be implemented unless an incident should be treated as a disaster. Right? We all are into certain scenarios wherein diseases and problems from medical sides are almost coming up every year. But it was only in 2020 when suddenly it has been declared as a pandemic. And it was a disaster for all of us. And there are certain new measures which have been imposed on us. So it's not every disease has been taken as disaster. Fine. So you have to decide out, these are certain parameters. There should be certain parameters which should be declaring that any incident, if handled nicely, perfectly, it becomes incident handling or business continuity. If it is not being handled perfectly, or there are certain incidents which result into certain unforeseen disasters, it has to be taken as a disaster, and then only DRP plan should be activated. But whether it is declared or not, the company must have an BCP and DRP ready with them. Right? So that's not like when the disaster is declared, you have to build up a plan. If it has to be done, then the organization will be delayed in the process or might be get exploited by the disaster itself. Right? So for that, you have to talk about business impact analysis. What could be the impact of any incident in the company? So every incident must be identified. That is known as incident response. Fine. So every incident, if responded perfectly, you know what is the impact of every incident. If incident is being normal, talk about BCP. If it's a disaster, you can talk about DRP. In whatever the problems of BCP and DRP, every organization has certain core processes. Every organization are having certain critical processes that needs to be continued in weirdest of the circumstances. Similarly, in the banking, you know that new banking account might not be open up during pandemic and all, but ATMs were working so that actually you can take the money out of it. So they need to have certain sort of management in which bare minimum business process should be continued. So that is called MBCO, that is minimum business continuity objective. That is referred to minimum level of services or products that should be acceptable required to organization to achieve the business objective in any incident, emergency or disaster. Right? Then comes minimum acceptable outage. That is the maximum acceptable outage. That means the maximum allowable downtime or maximum tolerable outage. That means the time you can sustain without the availability of resources. Every organization has a different time. A normal kirana wala or a big bazaar can sustain without the system for a day. But if these things will happen to the Indian defense system or airline management systems or railway systems or banking systems, their tolerable time is very less. So as the time is less, that increase more of the necessity of having the BCP and DRP in place. Correct? So make sure you are not developing BCP and DRP first. You should be identifying incidences. You should be identifying business impact analysis. You should be identifying what is minimum business continuity objective, what is maximum acceptable outage. And then only basis of these parameters and all, you should be able to identify that what are the critical areas that needs to be resumed. And that needs to be resumed within 5 minutes or 5 hours or 50 hours or 5 days. Then only you can find out the investment, the time, the energy, the effort that is to be placed in for developing a BCP and DRP. Okay. Then there has to be RTO and RPO, that is recovery time objective and recovery point objective. That is a predetermined time at which the product and services and quality must be resumed, right? And recovery point objective, that is maximum data loss or minimum amount of data used by an activity that needs to be restored. That is, what is the maximum data loss that you can sustain or minimum data which is required to resume that particular process. So these things must be decided prior, then only you should be talking about developing and implementing a disaster recovery or a business continuity plan. Okay, fine. What exactly is the DRP and what are the phases of DRP? Any disaster is talking about 4 phases, which are very specific, and I think everybody of you can align these things by any real-time example as well. That is the crisis phase. Immediately, what is being done? Suppose an incident happened just now, next few minutes or few hours, actually crisis phase. Fine, we all have been into the phase wherein demonetization was declared at 8 p.m. by Prime Minister, and immediately thereafter, a few hours was completely a crisis phase. We all know that 500, 2,000 rupees notes are not applicable, or maybe 1,000 rupees notes are not implementable, and we are looking for the 10, 20, 50 rupees notes which are available in any piggy bank, that they are the only ways out in which you can actually goes into the market even for your grocery and food item purchase. So that is the crisis phase. After crisis phase end, that becomes the emergency phase. That is, we all know that how to change those 500 and 2,000 rupees or 1,000 rupees notes into the bank, that becomes an emergency phase. Now, after the emergency phase ends, you start the recovery phase, and recovery phase ends, then you go for a restoration phase. That is, resuming the business process to the common conditions. We all have seen about a week back, there was a disaster in Odisha. It was a train accident. First few hours is a crisis phase. Then the teams comes up like disaster management team or the ministry and certain medical emergency, that is the emergency response team. Then it becomes 50 hours of the time in which the recovery phase started and continues for a few days and all, or maybe a few months to resume the business process. But during that process also, just for making sure the continuity of the transport is to be there, alternate paths are being created or alternate trains have been diverted to alternate path. That has been done. And thereafter, once the entire recovery phase is completed, today, if you talk about the restoration has already been done, that railway track, which was completely shattered, is being started functioning again. So these are 4 phases working systematically. Only after one phase complete, the second start. And there's a minute overlapping which is there in these phases, but not major. And every phase may have different roles, different responsibilities, different people to play it out. So if identified properly in an organization for every disaster recovery plan, you can actually designate a different individual for different roles and responsibilities. And that will be making sure that they are not overlapping their roles and everybody will be able to serve the best during the course of emergency. Is it clear? Any doubt? For sure? Great. So let me move forward. I am having another 25-30 minutes with me. So I am just trying to rush up, although I know 1.5 hours is small time to review 3 modules. But the purpose is to make sure the key topics are there in your mindset and a review of or maybe some sort of motivation is there for you for clearing these up. Similarly, there are phases of BCP as well. So BCP phases starts from impact analysis, which is again, we have talked about BIA, business impact analysis. What could be impact on business? Right, and which particular incident will make an impact for risk assessment, so that maximum issues are controlled by certain or are managed by certain controls, and whatever is left out as a problem area, whatever is left out is an unidentified area, whatever is left out is an area which may not be controlled at this point of time because of your financial concerns or technical limitations, the risk management or risk assessment will give you that area. And if there is a risk which is quantum of risk which is not being controlled effectively, then only you should go for planning and designing of a BCP plan. But the planning will not make sense until unless you are able to identify which are the critical areas, what can happen to your business. So again, developing a BCP plan for a company based out at Delhi or for a company's office based out at Delhi and for a company office based out at Chennai should be different. Because for Chennai, you may have to plan for tsunami, but for Delhi, you may have to plan for earthquake, right? So planning and designing of BCP should not be specific enough for the entire offices or entire businesses. It should be location-wise dependent also. It should be environmental-wise dependent as well. And it should be processing-wise dependent as well, correct? So every BCP plan needs to be separately designed as per the requirements. But until unless plan is being tested effectively, you cannot make sure that plan can be implemented. And technically, there are 5 ways which are mentioned in your module as well, which are the ways in which the plan can be tested. The checklist approach, structural walkthrough, simulation testing, parallel testing, and full interruption testing. So every testing gives you a different outcome. And I tell you, all testing need not to be done. Depending on your need, your financial limitations, your time constraints, your resources constraints, you can take one test or a combination of tests so that you can actually check the BCP plan is being ready enough to be implemented in the case of a disaster. Because guys, what happens is that in the terms of BCP, most of the time, BCP might be, you might be developing BCP today, but it may take 5 years, 10 years timeline where an incident happens which requires BCP to be implemented. Because most of the organization do not want any disaster or any interruption to happen. Still, investment and putting efforts in developing of BCP is required. But what efforts, what time, what incidents should be considered, that's something which is very critical. And for where ISO, and for that only, role of ISO auditor plays a very important role. Correct? So once the BCP plan is being tested and you feel like it's good enough to be implemented, then you have to make sure that your people are being aligned to that. So for alignment, you need to make sure that training of the staffs on the regular basis has to be there. Now, why I'm talking about regular? Because you have developed a plan today, might be needing 5 years down the line. An incident happen for which you need to invoke that particular plan. During this 5 years, if the training and the updation of the staff is not on the regular basis, they may forget their roles and responsibilities. So training is what? An ongoing process. It should not be every today and then 5 years down the line. No. Ongoing process. Reviewing BCP is again ongoing process. That is what the maintenance. Because technology changes, market changes, risk changes, asset changes, employees changes. And if you are not maintaining the BCP on the regular basis, your BCP developed in 2010 will be completely stalled out by 2023 when incident happens. So these are the phases of BCP. Should go very systematically from impact to maintenance. If you are doing it on the regular basis, no impact will be missed out if it is considerable enough, and no plan will be non-applicable if it is being maintained on a regular basis. But for all this, a BCP manual has to be there, which will serve as a reference document for you, that when it was developed, why it was developed, what are the incidents which are considered, so that you can review those manuals on the regular basis. And any reviewing of those manuals, if an ISO auditor feel like there is a gap, then you can suggest to do another BCP, or if some plan needs to be completely discarded, you can do that as well. So manual again plays a very important documentation as a reference also for an ISO auditor to review and check whether the plan is perfectly being made or not. Then there are certain types of backups and recovery sites. So full backup, incremental backup, differential backup. Let me just quickly review this for you. What is actually full backup? That is taking the backup of the entire system. That is full backup, right? Increment, that is you can say from always from beginning. Okay, when you talk about incremental backup, it talks about two things. That is what is being newly added plus what has been changed from the last backup. Just an example for you. Suppose you are running a club. And you have opened up for two things. That is, new members can also join and old members can also change their data like contact numbers, email addresses, or email IDs and their residential addresses and all. That means both the things can happen. New members can also be added and changing of the existing member data can also happen. So suppose you have taken a backup on 1st of January 2023 as a full backup. And thereafter you feel like, let's take a small backup in February, March, April, so that if anything goes wrong, you have a small backup as well, which can be restored. But every time you are not taking the full backup, you can take what? Incremental backup, incremental backup, incremental backup, because you are allowing these two things. But if you have stopped the new members to be joining, mark my words, if you have added or stop new member to join, if you feel like it's only changing in the old record, which is possible, no new member should be there, then incremental backup should not be there for you. You can go with differential backup. That means differential backup is only the backup of data which has been changed from the last backup. Okay. At the same time, when you feel like you have to have a multiple copies of the backup, not one single backup is good enough for you. So rather than taking multiple full backups or multiple incremental or multiple differential backup, you should take what? Backup of backup. Backup of backup, which is what? Mirror backup, right? So full backup is always the complete backup from the starting till date. Incremental backup is taken after the full backup, which is taking two things, which is newly added records and change records. Differential backup is only taking the backup of the change records. No new records have been taken because you have already stopped their functioning. And differential backup is only applicable when you have stopped new records to be added to the system. And when you feel like multiple backups are required, rather than taking multiple full incremental or differential backup, you should take multiple mirror backup. That is backup of backup. That is even faster and safer to take. Then you have to talk about recovery sites. Then when a disaster happens and if your normal sites are not functioning, then you have to have a recovery site wherein you can start your business operations. So mirror site, let me just give you small wordings which will give you a clear understanding of it. It is, fully cubed plus fully functional. Fully cubed and fully functional is what the mirror site. Hot site is fully cubed only, not fully functional. For making it functional, you have to put the data and make that happen. Warm site is not fully cubed, it is partially cubed. Because all your business processes are not critical, out of 100 process, only 30, 40 are critical. So you feel like rather than having the entire fully cubed infrastructure as a redundant infrastructure, you can only sustain with a partial infrastructure, that is warm site. Cold site is even lesser to that. That is called the least equipped site. The least equipped, the minimum equipped site, right? But all these four things, you need to create a site. That means the infrastructure investment in terms of devices or maybe in terms of buildings, in terms of networking, in terms of equipments and furniture will happen. But if you are not ready to do that, or else you feel like other options are available, yes, one is reciprocal site. That is arrangement between two or more companies to support each other in the case of disaster. That is the reciprocal arrangement. Suppose you and me have get into contractual arrangement that if anything goes wrong at my infrastructure, I can use yours, and similarly you can use mine as well in the case of problems. As we are entering into contractual agreement, so possibility of data theft and possibility of breaching down the process of each other will not happen. So reciprocal site can be an easy and financially viable options for smaller companies for setting up the recovery sites without being investing too much into infrastructure. But today what has been majorly used is outsourced sites, which are today majorly cloud sites, or you can say cloud-based recovery sites, in which rather than you setting up the infrastructure, you are tying up with some other the cloud service provider through a service level agreement and making sure you are using their infrastructure in terms of systems, in terms of storage, in terms of processing, in terms of applications and all, in terms of security as well, for support system for you in case of your regular infrastructure is not available. So that is called outsourced sites. All these things are pretty much in use depending on the organization requirement. None of these sites are absolute. Today also, there are mirror sites which are created because defense cannot rely on something and defense cannot stop their functioning even for a few minutes or so. So for them, yes, mirror site is required, which is fully equipped and fully functional. But for a smaller organization like you and me, even a reciprocal or outsourced site will serve the purpose in the case of disaster. But yes, there has to be recovery site and there has to be backup strategy for every company, and backing up of major resources, typically data, has to be there because rest everything, whether it is manpower, whether it is hardware, whether it is network or controls or softwares, can be purchased from the market or can be recrafted. But when it comes to data for a specific organization, which is your intellectual property and cannot be there available in the market, backing up plays a very important role. Okay, although for a proper strategy, it's not only data which is serving. Your infrastructure, your manpower, or all these things needs to be backed up, or you need to have some other redundancy of these processes to be there in place when a disaster happens. Got it? So why auditing of BCP? This is very simple. Whatever has been done in the entire BCP, as an ISO auditor, you have to evaluate whether the organization has evaluated the impact nicely or not, whether the testing has been done, whether the manuals are being crafted, whether the redundancy recovery sites are in place and are functionable enough or not, whether the backup has been taken automatically, all your critical files and data needs to be backed up, whether backup is also been securely placed or not, whether your SLA service level agreements with third parties who are supportive enough for your restorations are being nicely crafted or not. So that means there's a hell lot of work that is to be done by an ISO auditor, and for which, just repeating, ISO 22301 can become a reference framework for you, correct? So that completes up your module 2 as well, which is related to two things, which is GRC and BCP. Fine. Now I'm quickly jumping to module 3, although this is one of the easiest module, and I am sure that during your CA final or during your DSA classes also, this is the easiest thing which you have understood. So I'm just quickly reviewing it. So starting from this particular module, it talks about project management, because system development should be treated as a project, right? Automation of an organization should not be done without a project planning, without being, or you can say in a vaguely process. Automation is a costly process. Just a few examples for you. The railway, when they have gone for automation and releasing that automation in systematic modern format of IRCTC website for you as well, it talks about hundreds of crore which has been invested by them. Fine. So if the quantum of amount is so much, the stakeholders are so importantly being connected to that. If there are any problem, any hiccups into financial transactions, allotting the tickets can create a blunder. I think it has to be taken as a project which has a starting point, ending point, controlled and monitored properly, and you can actually feel the entire process in a systematic manner and able to control and monitor the process whether it is going in the right direction or not. So yes, it is a project. So each and every automation should be treated as a project, because cost, time, complexity which is involved in automation is important, and the stakeholder, which we have already talked about, fine, is playing a very important role in accepting this particular thing. So smallest of the entity is a project which has a starting point and an ending point, which is a project. Multiple projects which are related to each other, fine, similar projects, if grouped up together, that becomes a program. And when multiple related or unrelated program or portfolio grouped up, program and project are grouped together, that becomes the portfolio of a company. So in totality, when an organization is going for automation, financial automation, marketing automation, sales automation, logistic automation, in totality, they are actually developing multiple programs which resulted out in modification of their entire portfolio, that is from manual work to a completely automated organization. And when a project is to be there, your chapter 1 talks about these 5 steps. That is, project has a starting point, that is project initiation. Then there is a completely project planning. Then there is project execution, fine, and there is closing. These are the 4 major things. But apart from that, there is one more thing which is called controlling and monitoring, which is overarching the entire process from here to here. And that is where IS auditor has to play a very important role. Right? Without IS auditor conformance, because the third party expert is individual into project evaluation and all, the project, if going into the right direction or not, cannot be ensured. So your role, you can yourself see, is starting from here and continues till here. So it is the broadest of the scope. Apart from initiation, closing, planning, and execution, your scope is very much enhanced. So make sure you are connected to that. And your institute has put up 2 things out here which should be known to you, which is what Project Management Institute, PMI, and Prince, which is another framework which can be implemented. Although the details are not there in your module, so you can just refer. Project management talks about 3 basic terminologies, and aware about these 5 processes is good enough from examination perspective. And as system development is also a project, fine. So we have first understand these can be evaluated as in pre-automation in the banking. Till today, benefits are visible. The needs are by default known to you. Pre and post today for bank. Right? And for implementing a system development lifecycle, a plan, fine, there are certain phases that needs to be discussed. And Institute has put up all these phases in your module in a systematic manner. What I've done, I've just put up each and every phase and put up certain steps and tasks that are to be required in each and every phase. Fine. So pre-investigation, which is primarily also known as feasibility study, talks about these feasibilities to be studied. Make sure you are aware about all these feasibilities, that is technical, financial, economical, schedule, resource, compliances, behavioral, and operational feasibility. And if any feasibility not being tested perfectly, the assurance that the system will be nicely being made is in a doldrum situation. Fine, can go into a black hole. And the document which I've discussed before also for understanding the business is business case that has to be documented out here. Just mark my words, which each and every phase, there is some or the other documentation which is prepared. The documentation may have different names and different interests, but without documentation, it becomes very impractical to ensure that whether phase being nicely or perfectly been completed or not. And just to tell you, on every documentation, there are 3 signatures which are being placed. One is the management signature, or you can say top management signature or governance body signature. The signature from this particular team, which is investigation team, requirement team, they have to sign. And another sign is of IS auditor. So auditor role is always there in making sure whether that particular phase has been perfectly been done or not. In your module, whenever you are reading, focus on what is the requirement of this particular phase, what are the steps that needs to be conducted in a particular phase, and those are the steps and those are the words or those are the work for which auditor role is important. So always focus on auditor's angle rather than technical side into the system development, because you directly may not be known on system development, but without you, system development can never go into the right direction. Correct? So first phase is pre-investigation requirement. Second phase is requirement analysis, in which you analyze the requirement from all different angles. And before analyzing the requirements, you have to talk about 2 things, or maybe during the analysis, that is what is expected that can be assessed from requirement, and what is there today can be assessed from current system review. And current systems can be manual systems or can be an automated systems. So for reviewing those, you can talk about documentation, input review, processing review, output review. The only purpose of doing so is what? Gap assessment. And that gap will be fulfilled by preparation of system requirement specification, that this is need to be done to take you from the current situation to a new automated system. And this SRS is the most important documentation in the entire process. Until unless SRS is ready, no developer will take your project into development phase. Okay. And again, whatever has been done in this particular phase to be reviewed by you as an auditor. Then comes designing of the phase. So for designing, that means creating the UI and UX, creating the data dictionary, making the system component matrix, identifying the data flow movement, or maybe the entity relationship diagrams. So all these tools, these are actually what? Tools which can be used for showing the design of the system. That means how the system will look like when it will be developed. It is all pictorial representation. It is all diagrammatical representation. It is all image-based or UI and UX-based representation, not the actual system. But again, this is ready, this is required to tell me as a developer that what exactly you as a management needs. That is, what should be the menu, what should be the drop-down menu, what should be the alignment of the things, what are the color combinations and logo placings. Fine, what should be the size of a particular thing which is required, where the data to be entered and how it moves from information system from this to processing part, and who has to hold and who holds the responsibility for securing and managing that particular data. So all these things needs to be designed effectively, then only the developer can actually go for development. So this particular design part can also be referred to another document which is called SDR. But today, if you talk about SDR, is being merged with SRS, which is the documentation we have prepared here. So SDR and SRS are actually two, you can say SDR merged into SRS, and SRS plays a very sensible or single integrated role. Otherwise, you can prepare 2 documents as well if the technicalities are too high and you are required to prepare these 2 things. And again, whether these documentations are being nicely made or entire tools are being rightly selected, or the flow of data and matrices and dictionaries are being rightly done or not, auditor has to play an important role. Then you talk about acquisitions, although these are not a major part into your module, but these 2 words are there, which is invitation to tender and request for proposal. So whenever you are going for goods, that is the hardware devices and networking devices, you look forward for tenders in the market. And whenever you are looking for services, you look forward for request for proposal. And these documents plays a very important role when there are multiple players in the market and you are referring or you are in a process of selecting the best vendor. And for selection of best vendor, how to evaluate whether vendor is good enough or not, you can refer to a standard called CMMI model. Mark my words, CMMI model can take a reference. That is a performance-based model. And CMI level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 provides you a assurance that which particular company is what level. And you can rely on higher level of trading companies because they are they can be much reliable and much mature companies. So what is the full form of CMM? It is capability maturity model. Capability maturity model. I think these 2 words are sufficient enough to tell how capable and mature a company is. And obviously from level 1 to level 5 becomes the most mature and capable company. Is that clear? This again model today is a model by ISACA only. Fine. And they are the ones who are managing these things. And yes, every company, whether it is Infosys or a cloud service provider, everybody falls under CMI level certification. And on the basis of whether they are 3, 4, and 5, you by default entering the technical aspects are able to judge their capability and maturity and choose the right vendor for it. Correct? Then comes the development phase. Although as an ISO auditor, you might not be directly involved into that, but until unless you are checking the debugging is happening, the compliance and standards are implemented, the SRS and SDR related guidelines are being implemented or not, you cannot ensure whether system development is going to the right direction or not. Correct? Then comes very important part, which I am expecting at least 5 to 6 questions to come in the examination, is from system testing. Fine. So testing of any system which is developed is very important. So black box, white box, gray box testing. So black box testing is what? Only testing input and output, no processing. White box is processing testing as well. That means black box testing is a testing which can be done by a non-technical person as well, who may or may not know about the processing of the system. But white box testing needs a technical expertise because you may be involved into the technical aspects for the system. Correct? And a combination of black and white becomes a gray box testing. Alpha and beta testing are again very common testing. Alpha testing is done within the company by the developers for a specific period of time in a standard testing condition. Beta testing is given to us as a common user under a normal conditions, again for a specific time. Both these testings are important enough to check whether the system is being rightly made within the company so that any problem should be covered up before it being released to the market. And why beta testing? Because real-time analysis and real-time testing is also required. It's only after alpha and beta testing any package is actually being released as the final version in the market. And thereafter the updates come on the regular basis. Correct? Then unit integration system testing, you are aware of it. Security recovery by default makes a sense. Stress and volume testing is to check whether the system is been breaking down at what particular level. Every system breaks down at a certain level and every system should be meeting the basic requirements. As in certain examples, suppose you expect the system to process 10,000 transactions at one point of time. So you have to check whether the system is able to process that or not. If the system is crashing below 10,000 transactions per minute, that means it is failing in the volume and stress test and you have to upgrade the capacity of the system. If it is failing beyond that, in that case, you can actually rely on the system. Correct? Then quality, functional, structural testing, interoperability, which is also becoming very important testing today, because you can migrate the system from one infrastructure, one ecosystems, one for configuration to another. So if they are not interoperable, you have to migrate or the data or change the entire technicality, which is not possible always. So interoperability testing is also very much required. For each and every user acceptance testing is there, which will give an acceptance to whether the system is being justifying my requirements. And user training is also important to make sure the user is aligned to that. I am just putting up 5 to 6 questions is expected from testing. So make sure you are putting up very much stress on the testing chapter, which is being separately stated in your module. Then comes the implementation part, that how implementation needs to be done. So there are certain prerequisites of implementation which are common enough. Just one prerequisite is very important, that system cannot stop functioning unless data has been migrated to that. So data conversion or data migration, fine, has to be done from older format to a newer format or manual to system so that you can actually work on this. And then implementation strategies talks about 4 implementation, which is direct, phased, pilot, parallel implementation. That is one of those things needs to be checked out. One of the implementation strategy needs to be selected. So direct means stopping the older system today, and from today new system has been implemented. Phase means today suppose you have gone for marketing team automation, thereafter financial, thereafter logistics, that becomes phase. Pilot is testing one particular thing, and until you are satisfied, you are not implementing this to the other departments. And parallel means both the things are going parallel. As banking, financial, if you want to take 5,000 rupees also, you can go for ATM and you can go for standing in the queue also for getting things done. So they are getting things parallelly, right? And obviously post-implementation review and maintenance, which is important to make sure the system should be evaluated at a regular basis, and any gaps, any hiccups, any forced modification in the system should be done to make the system as long lasting as possible, because again creating a new system, new infrastructure, new hardware, new software is a costly affair. It is very similar to keep on maintaining your car also so that it can last for 15 years. Fine. Similarly, system should be maintained in an appropriate manner so that it can last as long as possible. So this is the entire SDLC phases discussed in a very precise manner. Fine. Divided into 8 things as per your modules. Then there are certain system development methodologies and approaches, and I am sure you are aware of all these processes. Not tough enough, but very critical. So for all these processes, I request you to just refer to module and make sure you are reading 2 things. That is, what are the advantages of a particular process and what are the concerns of a particular process. Institute asks very frequent question that a company has developed a particular system with this approach, facing problems, suggest the best possible approach in that situation. So you must know that out of the remaining, which is the best possible, which is covering the problems which are there in the X approach. So this has to be the way in which you will be able to, you have to answer the question. Apart from that, very simple question, a definition of a approach is given and they may ask which is this particular approach. So that becomes very direct. So just reading from the module about these approaches will become a clear-cut scenario for you, right? The last topic which we need to talk on is related to DevOps. Very specific. In a system development approach, there are two teams actually, development and operation team. So operation team wants things to be automated, development team has to develop those particular things. But always they need technical, they are very technical and there are non-technical persons. So aligning everything into these two teams is toughest thing. So for getting things done, we can take help of DevOps tools. So DevOps tools are non-technical tools. Actually, these are not technical, although these are softwares, but these are only for the purpose of aligning or mapping each and every requirement setting between development and operation team. But today, as it is not only DevOps, today there is another team which is also very important, which is security team. Because now security of an information system, data, processes is also very important. So it's not DevOps today, it's actually DevSecOps. Fine. So DevSecOps is actually aligning three things, that making sure that whatever development requires, whatever operation required, whatever security team required is to be aligned in such a manner the development should be meeting up the security requirement. It should not be hampering the operational issues as well. So rather than DevOps, today we are talking about DevSecOps. And when we are implementing DevSecOps, it's actually result into secure SDLC. We are not talking about SDLC as a separate thing. It has to be a security and integral part for it. So that's a secure SDLC. So what exactly is the security part? So as a security, you are talking about basic three securities, which is input security, processing security, and output security, which has to be implemented as an, embedded security controls in your systems. Embedded security controls, input controls, processing control, and output control. But apart from that, as a system should have boundary controls also. And after the systems works on, there has to be storage control for data as well. So aligning to all these three things, I think it becomes a complete comprehensive approach for understanding how application controls can be implemented in a system in an effective manner. Fine. So that is all from my side, that all these three chapters, whatever the best time or the time which was given to me, almost I have used that particular specific time to give a brief review of all these modules in a nutshell to you. Apart from that, there are multiple questions. So I have already put up some questions from module 1, module 2, module 3 for your reference. May not be able to do at this point of time, but if you want, I can share this thing with the chairman of Amritsar branch, and you can actually refer to these questions. Answers of these will also come down to you through her only. Okay. So anyway, thank you very much, ma'am. And I hope I have served the purpose of the session, that the topics, the revision that needs to be done, I have done it. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari ji. I have shared my email ID. I have received so many requests for sharing this question answer modules. Kindly do share me this question answers on my email ID, which I have duly shared it in those chat box.
Sure, I'll share this entire thing into a PDF format to you. Becomes a reference for them also for a review.
So there is one question from Mr. Gaurav Manjal from Ranchi. Yes. Do we need to study from DISA 3.0 module or DISA 2.0 module will be sufficient? Out of which module it is sufficient to crack the exam?
Fine. So let me tell you that today DISA 2.0 is now no more applicable. You have to migrate to DISA 3.0. And to be very frank, it's not much of a difference from the logic perspective. Logic for IS audit remains the same, whether it is DISA 2 or 3. Just there are few topics which are added. One of them is emerging technology, which was not there so much in detail in the previous module, which is there in DISA 3.0 as an emerging topic, which is having 7% of weightage. Apart from that, few things that is earlier in 2.0, it was COBIT 5. Now it becomes COBIT 2019 framework. Although the basic ideologies remain the same, but yes, 6 principle is being added. Earlier, there were only 5 principles. Earlier, there were only enablers as a named component, which we have discussed today. They were named as enablers. Today, it is component. So no major difference, but yes, DISA 3.0 is what to be studied for you. And this is what going to be asked in the question. No major difference. So do not panic yourself that DISA 3.0 is completely a new course and you will not be able to align to that. It is completely aligned. And the basics of IS audit, basics of technology, basics of risk, basics of compliances is not going to change. Apart from that, one small thing to talk on. There are 240 minutes for you for answering. It's 4-hour paper. And there are hardly 200 questions. So for each and every question, you are having 1.2 minutes. Fine. That is almost what do you say that 70 plus seconds for each and every question. 72 seconds to be very precise. Do not rush up in answering the questions. Make sure you are managing the time in a very effective manner during your examination process. So I say that 240 minutes to be aligned in such a manner that you have to have first 180 minutes only for solving the questions of the topics which you know, making sure you are putting those things in the examination paper itself, not answering anything on the real-time basis, right? Do not go for those marking into the OMR sheet as well. As of now, your DISA 80 is an OMR sheet examination paper. Apart from that, thereafter, once 180 minutes, that is almost 3 hours is over, make sure that next 30 minutes should be given to marking the answers in your answer sheets. If it is OMR based, if it is online, then you have to go for a real-time basis only. Thereafter, next 20 minutes is only to make sure that whatever has been left out, whatever the question which have been left out or confusing for you, you must focus on those. Fine. And thereafter comes the last 10 minutes for you. Last 10 minutes is what I prefer should be devoted to the time when it becomes a tukka sort of mode, because there is no negative marking. So I want you to make sure that even if 50-50, you are able to figure out that out of these two options, the answer is there. Make sure you are marking it out in the examination paper. Because of no negative marking, you should take the advantage of even guessing it out, or even some godly figure can help you out in even 1 marks. And I know the chartered accountant know the importance of 1 marks than anybody else in the world. Right? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari, considering the importance of even a fraction of mark, which is very important. Last, what happened in my office during July 22 exams, my article left in clearing the C exam due to 2 marks. So there is always fight of mark, 1 mark, 1 mark. Thank you so much. There are no further questions. We extend sincere thanks from the bottom of heart from the Digital Accounting Assurance Board, from Chairman C. Charanjot Singh Nandaji and Vice Chairman Daya Nivasji, to Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari for sparing his valuable time for enhancing the knowledge of the members. Thank you so much, Dr. Saurabh.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It's always a privilege, and thank you very much for giving this opportunity to me. And I am sure that Thakkar sir will take the journey forward, and he will raise the level of the standard whichever I have set to a next level because of experience and expertise into this field. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Amish Thakurji. Before Amish Thakurji take the charge, I would like to introduce him. Amish Thakurji is having more than 22 years of experience in the rendering expert professional services in the field of forensic audit, investigation audit, system audit, data analytics, and machine learning. Process reengineering in ERP, SAP, and CBS environment, security reviews, risk-based credit, compliance and assurance, operation, process reviews, and various business advisory services, including corporate training. Assist regulators, TRI, FIU, income tax, SEBI, RBI, local police authorities, cyber cell, in various investigations and forensic assignments. So day before yesterday, we have created one Mikasa page on the Insta, and it was connected with the Facebook page also, and it is being hacked by someone. Interesting, sir. How to solve this mystery, we don't know. And this Amish Thakurji is having more experience in industry expertise, media, shipping, and BFSI intermediaries. From ICI, he is having more than 13 plus years experience for ISA course as faculty and moderator. More than 8 years for FAFD course as faculty, sessions taken across India, Dubai, and Bahrain. Designed course structure for 3 days workshops on data analytics using CAD tools, and conducted hands-on practical training sessions across India. As an advisor, provides suggestions and guidance for various courses to IT committees of ICAI. He has conducted sessions at Gujarat Science Forensic University for Executive Management course on forensic accounting. He has trained income tax officials at ASCIT, ITO, grades at National Academy of Direct Taxes on data analytics and forensic accounting. He has been the regular visiting faculty at ITM Science Institute of Technology and Management for executive management courses. He is regular faculty for more than 13 years at various prestigious colleges in Mumbai like MCC College, Kelkar College, Mulund, SI College, Sion, Somaya College, Kotakpur for accounts and finance, banking and insurance courses and MCOM courses. In hobby, nothing is left except training in all the fields and running and doing yoga to keep fit. That's it. With this, I took this great privilege to introduce Amish Thakurji. Over to Amish Thakurji. This is your time to take the flight at that juncture from Dr. Saurabh Maheshwari left and to lead more. Thank you so much, sir. It's over to you.
Thank you, Renuji, for such a kind introduction, and thank you, Maheshwari ji, for taking participants to very in-depth analysis, and it's a commendable job to kind of cover 3 modules in such a small period of time. I'm sure I will be able to kind of live up to that and take the journey forward. Meanwhile, Renuji, may I understand how many participants are there, and do we have any option of interaction on a chat as the session progresses?
Ma'am, you are on mute.
So this is not in our hand to see how many members are participating. It is actually at the remote location of Digital Accounting Assurance Boards.
Okay. So do we have any kind of a possibility for having a live interaction during the session, or I'll have to take up the Q&A at the end of the session?
So you have to continue, and the interaction will be by the end of your deliberations.
Okay. So it will be like a webinar mode. It will be like a monologue till I finish my session.
It's a webinar, sir.
Okay. All right. So I'm just sharing my screen, and am I audible clearly, if you can confirm?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
And now is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. It's visible. How to crack ISA 3.0 assessment test. Sir, there is one question receiving on the phone call that you students and members are wanting your PPTs too.
Sure. That won't be a problem.
I have shared my email ID. Kindly do share on that, sir.
Sure. That won't be a problem.
Mine is already there on mail ID. You can check it out.
Okay, sir. Just a minute.
So a few disclaimers to begin with. And since the topic is how to crack ISA 3.0 AT, which is a final test where you will be getting a diploma certificate. So there are certain tools, techniques, methods, or tips that I'm going to share, and they are purely for you to use your discretion before applying them. These are some of the best practices, some of the best ways of cracking one of the toughest open book exam, which are MCQ exams. And although we think that these are MCQs, we have to choose out of 4 any one correct option, but these are really the toughest exam of the world. So having appeared for so many exams in the past and have cleared them successfully, some of the tips that I'm going to share have really worked for me, and I'm sure that they'll work for you as well. So disclaimer is that these are purely mine, and ICAI is not endorsing these techniques. So please, if you feel like adopting this while you're preparing for your exam, please do so at your own discretion. Some of the facts about exam. So your exam is about to happen on 8th of July, which is on Saturday. The time of the exam is from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., which is 4 hours. It is on a physical mode, so you have to physically go appear in an exam center. It is not going to be online. If you have not registered for your exam so far, then you must visit these sites. Then you must go to this link and initiate your registration, registration window is open from 31st May till 13th June, 12 o'clock midnight, India Standard Time. You can make the payments using your cards or net banking. And this is the link you can go through if you have any clarity or if you need any further clarity with regard to AT exam. So these are the facts which are going to be interesting for those who are still in a dilemma whether to appear for this attempt. Have I got enough preparation? Am I ready or not? So if you are under that dilemma, you have time till 13th June. So we are on 9th June evening today. You have got 4 more days to decide. And once you have decided, then you can follow what Dr. Maheshwari had said and what I am going to share to try your best to clear this exam. Further facts, there are total 200 questions. Total time allotted is 240 minutes. Passing requirements is 60%, which is 120 correct answers. And the best part of this exam is no negative marking. So make your efforts to complete the paper. Even if you are not clear in terms of which option to choose, try your level best and choose the correct one or close to the correct one if you're not sure, but don't leave any question unmarked. You have to mark all the 200 questions. Okay. So take full advantage of this feature, and not all MCQ exams which are conducted globally are having this feature. It is there in DISA 3.0. Take advantage of it. Yeah, and 60% is a simple average. There is no weighted average. That there are 6 modules. So 60% you have to score in an individual module. That is not the requirement. Yeah, you can score 60% overall, not module wise. So there is no weighted average. I'm repeating. It's a simple 60% average. 120 correct answers and you are DISA qualified. Okay. When you click on this link, you will see this window. This is open till 13th June, 12 o'clock midnight. And when you click here, you will see everything about the exam. All your queries will be resolved after you visit this link. Okay. So you may take a moment, note down this link. This is the link where you have to go and follow the process of registering yourself for ISA 80, which is going to be held on 8th of July. All right. This is about your mark distribution, right? You've got 6 modules. Module 1, Module 3, and Module 4 has got a weightage of 18% each, which means out of 200, there will be 36 questions which will be asked. Module 2, you will have 32 questions, which is 16% weightage. The most highly weighted module and one of the difficult module in the entire syllabus is Module 5, which takes about 22% weightage, and 44 questions will be asked out of 200. Module 6 is an emerging technology module. It has got the least weightage, 8%, which is where only 16 questions will be asked to you. Okay, so just take a moment, go through this before I proceed with the next slide. All right. Now, how do you succeed in ISA exam? So there are certain success factors which I feel are important. I have applied for and appeared and cleared internationally many MCQ exams, and this has worked for me. So I'm sharing my success mantra, and this is the kind of feedback from students who have cleared or participants who have cleared DISA exam. This is what they have done. So first point is very, very important. Obviously, others are equally important, but even if you qualify another 4 points, other 3 points rather, but if your first point you are not qualifying, then there'll be a lot of stress that you will be carrying in an exam hall. So please ensure that you have 30 days to your exam. As the exam is approaching, have proper rest, be in a peaceful state of mind, and ensure that you have got a sound health. Why I'm saying is that these are the factors which we ignore. So June is a busy period where you will be, following up with your client for filing your advance tax, and various other due dates will be approaching. 30th June is a quarter end, so a lot of compliances, a lot of follow-ups. So I know, your domain of taxation, indirect tax, they will take a lot of stress on your shoulders. You will be busy complying and, fulfilling those requirements within the due dates. But you have to seriously put an effort. You have to seriously and, actively take an effort to remain peaceful, to have a sound rest, take sound sleep, and remain positive. Okay, this is very, very important for appearing for any exams, especially MCQ exams, because a lot of clarity is required. Clarity will only come if your mind is peaceful. Okay, most of the participants who fail, and the ones which fail with a very low margin of 2-3 marks or 5 marks, that's because they cannot manage the stress in the exam. Their mind gives up after 2.5 to 3 hours of exam environment. Spending 4 hours in an MCQ exam is not easy. As you start progressing, as you start looking into the questions, the stress starts building up. So if you've taken a proper rest, if you're in your good sound health, that stress will not take a toll on your head. You will be able to still negotiate it. You will still be able to make a way out of it. You will be able to remain calm, cool, composed, and you will be able to think in the right direction. So this is very important. Don't undermine on this point. Okay. Second is clarity of concept. Now, Maheshwari ji has already given you in 1.5 hour a very, very detailed coverage on which are the areas on which you need to focus, which are the areas where the questions are expected. Okay. So while you're reading those modules, have a special focus on those. I will be taking you through what are the important concepts that you need to emphasize upon while you're studying for module 4, 5, and 6. Please note that DISA exam requires only working knowledge. You need not have an expert knowledge. I am repeating, this exam is only going to test your working knowledge of all the concepts covered in this module. Okay, you are not expected to be an expert in all these concepts. So don't go overboard. Don't read too much outside material. Don't read some things which are available on Google or, something which doesn't relate to your course. Stick to your course reading modules, because now there are only 30 days. Whatever you could have done it so far, thus far. Now you don't have enough time to explore the outside world. Okay. Because working knowledge is needed, just focusing on the module will be enough. But while you are focusing on the module, thorough reading, which I guess you might have already done by now, because now only 30 days remaining, there's no time for you to read thoroughly. Now it's time for you to review important concepts and, most importantly, solve MCQs. Solving MCQs will give you that comfort, will give you that visibility that whether you have understood the concepts, whether you have understood the coverage of the module, and whether you will be able to apply your understanding in an exam situation. Understanding the concept is one. Applying them in the question, in the exam scenario under stress is different. It requires a lot of rehearsals. It is like a stage appearance. before an actor goes to the stage, they do a lot of rehearsals. Even the best of the actors, they take retakes. So solving MCQ is your opportunity to take a retake and understand whether you have understood the concepts properly or not. If you don't solve MCQs, you will never have an assurance that you will be able to clear exam or you have got clarity on the concepts. Hope whatever I'm saying is going through you. Unless you test your understanding, nobody will tell you, including yourself, that how much you know. It's only when you put your understanding into practice by solving MCQs, you understand where your knowledge stands, whether you are capable to appear for an exam, whether you will be able to clear your exam, that you will be able to assess by solving MCQs. So these are the success factors. And as I'm repeating again, attempt all questions. There is no negative marking. Okay, I'm reinforcing this again and again. Other success factors when you appear for an exam, think as an IS auditor. Don't think from the management standpoint. Of course, there are certain aspects which are covered in the module where your understanding as a management is required, but these are very limited concepts. The focus or the thrust of this course is on you are going to become a systems auditor. So think like an auditor, evaluate the questions, evaluate the situation given in the question as what auditor would have done in this situation. Yeah. The good thing is that we all chartered accountants are experts in 3 domains: account, audit, tax. So by virtue of you being a CA, you already have an understanding of what auditors do. What is the bent of mind required from an auditor? Just that you have to apply it on the system. Instead of financial statements, instead of books of accounts, you have to apply this concept on the 5 pillars of information technology or information system infrastructure. Okay, so thus far, whatever you are doing as an auditor, you are applying your knowledge on books of accounts. Your scope was revolving around books of accounts, be it like a voucher, ledgers, registers, journals, trading account, profit and loss, balance sheet, notes to accounts, or any other document that contributes to books. That was your scope as a chartered accountant doing financial audit. This course, you are a chartered accountant doing systems audit. So the scope, the things that you check has undergone a change. What are the 5 things now you are going to check? These are the 5 pillars: hardware, software, network, people, and information. I repeat once again. What are the 5 things that you are going to check? Hardware, software, network, people, and information. And what are the things that you're going to check in those 5 things? Like when we do statutory audit, what do? We look for compliances, whether books of accounts comply with accounting standards, whether books of accounts comply with income tax rules, whether books of accounts comply with GST, whether books of accounts comply with Companies Act. If it's a banking organization, whether the RBI regulations are complied with. If it's an insurance company, whether IRDA regulations are complied with. And after you verify this, you go back to the management and give a report saying that yes, your books are true and fair. They comply with all what was required, and therefore your books are true and fair. If they are not compliant, you issue an adverse report saying that no, your books are not in line with all these regulations. Or else, in most of the cases, you issue qualified report saying that, hey, look, barring few things, rest of the things are complied with. So you issue a qualified report. Similarly, friends, here you have to evaluate these 5 components: hardware, software, network, people, and infrastructure, and give an assurance back to the management that your 5 components, whatever you have created for your organization manages the confidentiality, integrity, and availability risk. This is the entire thrust of the 6 modules. This is the summary of the entire course, if I were to say. What is your job? You have to evaluate 5 components on 3 magical words. And these are the 3 risk areas. Your entire course revolves around confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So when you read all these 6 modules in this 30 days, this is from 9th June to 8th of July, or rather 7th of July. 8th is your exam. So 9th June to 7th of July, you have to remember, chant this every day in the morning that I have got 5 components and I have to evaluate them as an IS auditor on CIA. So when you read, your line of thought should be aligned to this. Okay. Now, afterwards, after you have understood these 5 pillars and 3 components of risk, I'll give you a few more keys. If you remember this, if you apply this in any of your reading, you will be able to find correct option quickly, and you will be able to save some time for the tough questions where you have to put more effort to analyze. So these 3 keys will actually help you to get right answers to almost 20 to 25% of the questions. And you can mark these keys when you're solving your MCQs or when you are doing a mock test. You yourself will be able to experience that by applying these 3 keys here, you have been able to select correct options for at least 20 to 25% questions, which is huge. Out of 200, if I say 25%, which means 50 questions, if you are able to crack just by applying this line of thought using this key, it's a good preparation for you. That it will increase your chance or probability of clearing your exam. First and foremost, please understand that IT or IS, that is information technology. Forget about income tax, okay? This is technology course. So whenever I refer to IT, it's not income tax. It is information technology, okay? So as a chartered accountant appearing for an ISA exam, you have to forget about income tax and regulations, okay? Now, think information technology as an enabler to the business. You all would appreciate, even as an IS auditor, even as a statutory auditor, even as an internal auditor, process auditor, you would have realized by now that most of the business critical processes are embedded into technology. The controls are embedded into technology. There are hardly any processes which are manual. So technology is a backbone. Technology has an omnipresence. You cannot think a business without an involvement of any of these 5 components. Even smallest of the shop, even us today, will have a computer and the bill will be generated from that. Isn't it? The smallest shop on the railway station will give you a digital copy of the bill. That means they are investing their money into hardware, software, network, people, and information. So the first key, very important key, is IT or IS can enable the business, cannot drive the business. Okay, just because a particular technology is not available, I will not decide to not do the business. I will not say because technology is not supportive, let me not do this business. I'll only do the business where the technology is available. No. First, the businesses are designed. First, the business requirement is designed, and then the technology is designed to help the business. I'll just give you a simple example. When Uber came in, Uber came with a taxi service. Okay, so they developed the infrastructure, they developed the platform, they developed the application where a passenger can book a taxi. Okay. Later on, Uber decided that, okay, we want to get into the Uber Eat business. We want to give delivery of the pizza. We want to give a delivery of any food. Now, what do you think? For Uber Eat, will Uber reinvent the entire infrastructure, redesign the entire infrastructure, will reinvest and start from scratch? No, they will use the existing infrastructure of Uber taxi service, will customize it, will modify it to suit the requirement of the Uber Eats business, right? Next, say for example, Uber is setting up the IT infrastructure for catering to 100,000 customers. They think that at any given point in time, 100,000 customers globally are surfing my application and booking taxi. Now, what if tomorrow more than 100,000 customers wants to book? Now their demand is increasing because of their service is better. Now 120,000 customers simultaneously wants to book a taxi globally. Now system won't help them. Why? Because system has a stress level or simultaneous concurrence level of only accepting 100,000 parallel booking because their bandwidth is only up to that much. So what will happen? Any incremental customer will not get the service. It will impact their business. So Uber cannot say sorry because there is no technology. 100,000 is my maximum limit. So you are limiting the growth of the business. So business will say to the IT infrastructure development team, I don't care whether what your systems are. I want 130,000 as my limit now. Tomorrow, if I want 200,000, you have to enable that for me. So please understand, whenever the exam question comes, think that don't give preference to the technology. Give preference to the business requirement and choose the correct option. And the second key is linked with that, alignment with the business strategy. Any single rupee invested into these 5 pillars has to generate a positive ROI. It will only happen if your investment is aligned with the business strategy. There are many businesses. Now, this is not the forum where I should be discussing all this because our main agenda for today is how to clear exam. So we will focus more on that, but I'll just end up by saying that there are so many businesses which have miserably failed because IT was not enabling that business. IT was looking westwards, business was needing eastwards. So because of that gap, IT couldn't deliver and business couldn't drive. So these are the key things. Your entire module reading has to be done keeping these 3 things in mind. This is the most important slide in my entire presentation, if I were to say. Okay, this describes the entire course in this one slide. And in future, if you want to pursue further qualifications in the technology domain, which are international qualifications, this is the fundamental. This is what you have to remember. This 3 magical term comes from ISACA, one of the most premier institute in the world, offering qualifications in this domain, right? Now, few of the things I had worked on your behalf. I have done something which you should have done or by now you might have done. But I thought for the benefit of all of you, what you should be doing from today after session is over or from tomorrow morning onwards till 7th of July. So, scheduling and time management, 30 days to exam. So you have to allocate your days to these modules in this fashion. I've taken from tomorrow till 7th of July. Approximately you've got, not approximately, rather you've got 30 days to exam. So considering the complexity of the module, considering that you are all chartered accountants, these many days you have to allocate to these sort of modules. Now, if you have seen for module 5, I have given the maximum weightage because that is generally what we have seen as a faculty is this module is a bit difficult for participants to digest because this is the only module in the entire syllabus which talks about technical terms. Typically a network and a network control, physical controls, which are some things which we as a chartered accountant have not seen it or have not experienced it. Okay. Whereas if you see module 1, 2, yeah, they are typically the domain of chartered accountants. So I have given less weightage. Now, I am not saying that you should devote these many days in spirit. You can assess for which module how much is your comfort level. Like, for example, if one of the participant is comfortable in module 1 and 2, and he thinks or she thinks that I don't need 4 days, you can reduce it to 2 days or 3 days or 2.5 days. Okay. That is purely at your discretion. You can decide. If you have not done anything, if you are not sure where you stand in terms of your understanding, then this is the structure you must follow. Then this is going to help you. And I'm not going to be very rude to you. I've given you 3 days of break as well in between. So 10% break is also included in this. Yeah, so I understand we can't sit and digest technology. You can't read non-stop 30 days. Reading technology for chartereds who are very busy in the other domain is difficult. But if you are determined to clear exam, then you have to at least, I have not mentioned any hours here because that's very subjective. So whatever hours you decide based on your competency and comfort level, but this sort of a day breakup is needed. Now, why I have divided this module-wise days, there's one reason behind it, there's one merit behind it, which is what I'm going to show you next. So please note this down, just take a screenshot. Yeah, although presentation will be there, but if it is there on your mobile, you, while prioritizing your time management or scheduling, this will be handy. Okay. Now, once we have decided that how many days you are going to kind of allocate to each and every module, the step number 1 is revise important key concepts. If you have made any personal notes, revise them. But the important thing is module wise. That is one of the reasons why I have given you a split of days module wise. What I am trying to tell you, please listen to this very carefully. Suppose you have decided to start. See, there is no chronologically order that you can follow. It's not that you can first start with module 1, then go to 2. Okay, you can go start your journey of revision with any module. Because we assume that you have attended professional training. We assume that you have done at least first level of reading, right? Because 30 days, you can't just start reading now. It's too late for you to start reading now and prepare for the exam. Some reading might have already happened. So that's an assumption. So now, let us say Mr. X has decided to start the reading with module 3, because he feels that module 3 is where he needs some time. And in the fresh mind, he can digest that module 3. So now important thing is this step number 1. Until you finish all the chapters of module 3, do not migrate to any other module. Because within module, these chapters are interlinked. They are connected to each other. So hopping between one chapter of module 2 and third chapter of module 3 and fifth chapter of module 5 will not help. Instead, it will confuse you. So please be careful on that. Again, this is my suggestion. If you follow this, it will help you. If you are comfortable switching over, feel free to adopt that approach. I am only sharing best practices. Please go back to my disclaimer, okay? Don't come back and blame me if something goes wrong, which ideally would not, okay? So, like I said, if you started with module 3, thoroughly finish all the key concepts of module 3. Then what you need to do immediately, follow step number 2. Do not start with any other module. Immediately follow module 2. What is that? Start solving MCQs of only that module. So if you have finished module 3, take all the questions of module 3 only. Now, for example, for module 3, you have decided that you're going to take 5 days. Now you have taken 4 days or 4.5 days, then you only got half a day for solving questions. If you have finished your module in 4 days or 3.5 days, then you've got far more time to solve MCQs. So how much to solve depends upon how much time you have. Don't overboard. So you have to rigidly adhere to these days. Like you can't say that, okay, I've taken 4.5 days for module 3. Now, half a day is not enough. I need another half day for MCQs. No, you have to stress yourself, finish within that because you have only 3 days break and you must take break in between. Continuous reading is not advisable. So now, Solving MCQs also has a pattern. What is the pattern? So now we have read module 3, you are very fresh with your concept. And as I mentioned, when you read something, unless you solve it, you will not be able to know where you stand in terms of your understanding. So when you solve question, when you get a right answer, don't be happy. I'm repeating, when you get a right answer, don't be happy. Refer the explanation. Reconcile whether what you thought before selecting the right answer, is it the same thing given in explanation? Because these MCQ exams, sometimes by luck also, you may end up selecting the correct answer. So if you have solved 10 questions and if you have ended up answering 8 correct answer, it's a good thing. It's a good comfort that you will get, friends. But at the end of the day, when you read explanation, you will come to know whether these 8 answers are really correct. Or out of that 1 or 2 where my understanding was wrong, explanation says something else, but I invariably ended up selecting correct answer. That should not happen. If that happens, then you revise your understanding. When you get a wrong answer, then something to worry about, because you have immediately after completing the module you are revising and still you are ending up selecting the wrong answer, which means either your mindset is not right, you're not thinking like an IS auditor, or you're not applying those keys, or really you've not understood the concept. So although you thought that you understood, but there needs some more of an understanding, but you have no time left. Yeah. So that's the risk that you're taking if the answer is wrong. Okay. Then once you finish module 3, once you finish your MCQs, then start revision of the next module. So you can pick up any module. So here the order can be anything, but the moment you pick up, chapters has to be read in the chronological order. Every module has 3, 4, 5, 6 sort of a chapters. Those you have to read in order because they are interlinked. And finally, most important thing, you have to do a mock test. After you finish all the modules, I have given 1 day for a mock test. You have to isolate yourself. Yeah, spend 4 hours without seeing your mobile, without getting distracted. Keep a time alarm on your screen, or maybe you can set an alarm which keeps beeping after 1 hour. So first alarm 1 hour, second alarm another 1 hour, third alarm another 1 hour, next is 3.5 hours. So are you progressing? This is required. Most of the students who don't pass, they complain that at the end few questions were left and we just applied because there was no marking and we lost the exam. If we had more time, if we had planned well, this situation could have been avoided. So please be wary of these facts. I am highlighting all those aspects which you are going to face because I have gone through this. As I said, almost 7 exams I have given which are of this nature. And every time I kept on giving exam, I kept on improving on it. So my last exam was a cakewalk because those things which I used to practice have become habits. Yeah, I know not easy to adopt to this in 30 days, but what I understand is any habit to take place, you need 21 days. Yeah, even you don't have that much. You have to adopt too early now. So mock tests and MCQs is must. Don't just rely on your reading. It will be a false alarm for you if you just end up reading module thoroughly. Okay. So this is your study pattern. If you follow this meticulously, probability of passing will be very, very high. Now I have told you what to do before exam, what you should do during exam. Now you are sitting in the exam hall, please reach early. Okay. Generally, you have to kind of budget for the traveling time. You have to budget for your traffic. You have to budget the rainy season because by the time exam will come, the situation would be different. It might be raining. And in India, in some parts, it rains very heavily. So to budget all this. I know you are chartered accountants, you are matured enough, but these are the things which are generally ignored. So I'm just trying my best to recollect whatever I could tell you. So please keep this noting down. Yeah, you have to be in exam hall too early, at least 10, 20, 25 minutes early so that you can calm down, you can rest well. Yeah. If you go and reach 5, 10 minutes early, it will be too much of rush for you to settle down. And those minutes counts because a timer immediately starts the moment they start hand over the paper. Now, this is another math I have done, which other speaker, Dr. Maheshwari, has also provided you a visibility around it. So during exam, you have got 200 questions, 240 minutes, 1.2 minutes, which translates into 72 seconds. Now, this is a simple math. For every question, you have 72 seconds. Here, the assumption is not even a single minute is wasted on anything else. Complete 4 hours is dedicated to the paper, which means you're not even looking left, right, and center. So that's not possible. So this is also an illusion. You don't actually have 72 seconds, you have less than that. Because sometime you might have to go out for a bio break, you might be sipping water, you might be taking a small break in between after you solve 50 questions. All that needed, yeah? But now, whatever I am going to tell you is very unique to me. I don't think you will find anywhere. This is my math and it has worked for me. So if it is fine with you, please try to follow when you're solving MCQs. See if it is helping you. If yes, then just keep following. Your probability of selecting the right option will increase manifold if you follow this. This has been my personal experience. Up to you. So what to do in 72 seconds? So now imagine you are doing MCQ solving. You have read module 3, you are solving MCQs. Rehearse this before you do this in exam. So here, psychology plays a lot of important role. So first thing, the moment you look at question number 1 or question number 2 or question number 175 or something, the first thing you should do is take your palm and hide the options. आपके हाथ से चारों ऑप्शन को हाइड कर दीजिए. Don't look at them. What you should do, hide all the options with your palm. Then what to do? First reading of the question. Read the question and finish the question within 30 seconds. You have got 72 seconds? Yeah. You can use almost 40% of that time reading the question and finding the key word out of it. If you hide your options and you read the question, the benefit of that is that your mind will start thinking in the right direction because your mind have not looked at only 4 directions available. Okay, so now what has happened? Your 4 options are closed. You have read the question and you have identified the keyword. Then remove your palm and read the options. So to read the options, you should spend maximum. These are all maximum. Huh? It's not minimum. In 15 seconds, you have to read those options. If you read those options in less than 15 seconds, nothing like it. You can add this time in solving more tougher questions. Now, this is where the psychology helps. When you read the question first, you were not aware of or you were unaware of the options. So your mind has started applying the logic in the right direction. When you removed it, you removed your hand and looked at 4 options. Now your mind is very sharp to kind of nail at the right option. Okay. So when you nail within this 15 seconds that you think that this is the first option which is going to be correct, and if not this, then this is the next one. So out of 4, you will be able to eliminate 2 immediately. So now instead of 4, you have to select out of the 2, which is more easier. So now if you're confused, if you get to hit in the right option in one reading, nothing like it, 5 to 10% of the questions will be like that, where you will be able to do that. It's a tough exam, so we don't ask you so many such questions where you will be able to hit the correct answer in first go. So you need to read the second time. Now, 30 seconds you have already spent. You have got the keyword. Now you have got 4 options. Hopefully you might have eliminated 1 or 2. Now you have got 20 seconds to read the question once again. And in 7 seconds, you can select which one is the correct out of the 2 or out of the 3. if you follow this, if you practice this before going to an exam, I guarantee to a greater extent, your probability is going to be very high. Again, I am re-emphasizing. Finally, if you can't do time management, if you haven't done any mock test, if you're running short of time and you have to answer so many questions, then just go by your gut feeling. Just keep marking whatever you deem fit. This is the last resort. And you may be lucky if whatever you do by fluke, you end up invariably selecting the right option. Right. I have given you a few examples of how to find keywords in the question. So here are some of the examples. Have a look at it. If these keywords were not there, then the correct answer could have been different. So take a moment first, have a look at these two questions, and then I'll explain to you. Now have a look. If you look at this question, which of the following control classification identify the cause of a problem and minimize the impact of the threat? Now here, friends, minimize is a keyword. And because of this word, the answer is D, corrective control. Take a moment to digest my point. Because of the word minimize, the answer is corrective control. Now, for the time being, let's assume that I have removed this point. I have removed this word minimize. And now I read the question as, which of the following control classifications identifies the cause of a problem and impact of threat? Then the answer would change to detective controls. So this is the power of identifying the words which you can link. Now with minimize, why corrective? Because when a problem has occurred, a threat has already materialized, a risk has already happened, which has created a negative impact on the 5 pillars of your IS infrastructure. Now, for this same problem to occur again in future, do you want to have the same impact, same kind of a loss, same magnitude of the loss next time also? The answer is no. So for that, you would put some corrective control. So even if the same problem occurs again, the impact of that is going to be less. Like some of the problems are such which are beyond your control, right? Like for example, the rainy season is about to come. So I can't predict when it's going to rain. So I am out on the street, suddenly rain has come and it has impacted me very heavily. Next time I'll be more careful. I'll carry the umbrella with me. Even if the problem occurs, the impact will be less. Having an umbrella doesn't guarantee that I won't get wet, but I will not get wet with the same degree which I got wet earlier. This is how the question reads here. I just gave you an analogy. So identifying important word can really help you. And if that word is not there, the options may undergo a change. Sometimes the words like primary, most, least, something like that will also be a helpful keyword for you. These are some of the other examples. Now here, if you see, there are two keywords, most as well as after. Yeah. So I've just given you examples. We don't have enough time. Within half an hour, I have to even cover important concepts of modules 4, 5, and 6. But I think more than that, these are the important things that you may practice, you may rehearse, that will increase the chances of your clearing the exam. Because the theme, I guess, is this. So I'm focusing more here on this. All right. So with this, I have given you whatever I thought prudent and which will increase your chances of clearing. feel free. I'll share my email ID with you. Feel free to connect with me if you are facing any problem during your preparation. I may be more than happy to guide you in whatever way. So these are all the tips and tricks and tools and techniques and scheduling and all. Now, as I mentioned in my earlier slides, that having a clarity of the concept is important. So previous speaker, sir, has already given you a good insight on first, second, and third module, helped you to understand and give you clarity on the concept. I'll do the same for module 4, 5, and 6. So just 1 minute pause, because pauses are also important. Back-to-back understanding is also difficult. So just a 1 minute pause if you want to just see outside, take a small break, and then come back. So just 1 minute. Yeah, it's always good. If you're sitting on the chair for long, just get up, have a movement, let the blood circulate. It's also equally important. Unfortunately, in exam, if you can't do, you have to sit for 4 hours. But if there is any possibility, then just get up for 1 minute from your chair and then sit. That really helps in exam. I'll also sip some water in the meanwhile. All right, so you can listen to me while you're standing, you're stretching. Yeah, you have a freedom of that, isn't it? I have to sit and deliver, but since you are invisible, you can have your comfort zone. So, well, module 4 talks about information systems, operations, and management. It has got 4 chapters, so read them in the sequence without changing the order. So let's see which are the important concepts we have here. So module 4 talks about the roles and responsibilities of key committees and key job roles. Okay. So key concepts in chapter 1 under roles and responsibilities. If you remember the key that I gave you, that IT strategy should be aligned to business strategy. So for that, there is a separate committee which large organizations have, which is called strategy committee. Their job is to align the goals of the business with the goals of the IT with the goals of the business. It's a very senior level committee, very high level committee, management representatives, including a board member, sits in this committee. Okay. Steering committee comes below strategy committee. Strategy committee is more at a macro level, and steering committee is more at an execution level. Though they do not sit and execute any of the projects, but they are an oversight body. The responsibility is entrusted on the shoulders of steering committee to ensure whatever strategy committee's expectation is there from the 5 pillars is being delivered by the steering committee. Okay. Now, steering committee again has all the C category, C-suite, CFO, CTO, CEO, CHRO, CMO. These people provide the requirement and ensures that these requirements are implemented. So steering committee is the one who keeps an eye on the developments of the ongoing projects or, utilization of the budgets in the right direction, meeting end user expectations. These are the things that they look at. The topmost designation in the user management or people management of IT, of the 5 pillars, one is people management, which is where module 4 is focusing. CISO, CTO, CIO. These are the terms which are used in industry. Depending upon the industry to industry, different terminologies or the designations are given, but they are the top level executives in the IT team. Chief Information Security Officer or Chief Technology Officer or Chief Information Officer. They are responsible for everything happening in the IT or IS infrastructure. They have to ensure they meet the business needs and justify the investments of the business, and they enable the business to run smoothly. One of the important aspects in the IS management is security management. Within that comes the network management and data management. So as I said, your entire module revolves around 5 things: hardware, software, network, people, and data or information. So this is the job of security management. One of the key concepts that you need to remember is a process owner or a risk owner. Anybody in the organization who owns the process owns the risk. So if I'm a CFO in the company, accounting is the process that I own. And my accounting is using the IT infrastructure in the form of an application, say Tally ERP or a FICO module or a HANA module of a SAP or ERP. So I'm availing the services of the application. My data is getting stored somewhere in the server. I am accessing the data through internet. So network facility is getting used. My users are being given privileges to access the system. So as a CFO, my team is using the IT infrastructure. Different types of services are used. Now, any risk that materializes in my process, I am the owner and I am accountable for the consequences. So that clarity you have to have while you read module 4. Finally comes the user management, which is the bigger aspect of entire module 4. Everywhere module 4 talks about user management. Okay, we'll also have few slides later in the subsequent chapter. So as I said, you have to read chapters chronologically. Chapter 1 gives you an introduction on user management. Subsequent chapters deal in great detail. Also, chapter 1 focuses more on before, during, and after hiring. What are the things you're supposed to do? Yeah, due diligences, background checks, previous employment checks, qualification checks. Yeah, so the ethical values of these people are required because they're handling sensitive information. Again, CIA. If good people are not coming on board, your risks increases. Then it talks about how to procure hardware and software. Yeah, developing applications as per the requirement of the user, managing the data in the databases in the backend, providing operating system supports, log management, and cybersecurity. These are the key concepts while reading module 4 you should emphasize upon. Yeah, log management is very important. Without logs, it is very difficult to audit also. This is one of the very effective detective mechanism. Okay. So basically, IT infrastructure, server operations, and user operations, they are intermingled. And this is part of information system operations. There are a lot of questions that you can expect on change management. What do you mean by change management? Right now, I'm using a standalone software like Tally. I'm using another standalone software like customer relationship management. I'm using another standalone software for inventory management. Now I have decided to migrate all these 3 individual softwares to one common platform called SAP or ERP. So that migration is a change management. Yeah, I have one data server in a bank, okay, which hosts my ATM data, my SWIFT data, my Finacle data. Now I want to split my server. I want to have a dedicated server only for Finacle. I want to have one web server for my ATM. I want to have another web server for my net banking. So that's a change management. Yeah. Or migrating from in-house to a cloud. That's also a change management. So I gave you an understanding of change management, and every change has to follow the process. So these are the steps. If you now understand the concept of change management, these subsequent steps will be very easy for you to understand. Then comes a very key concept of version controls. Version control is important because every version has its benefits, its merits, as well as limitations and vulnerabilities. Like Windows XP was the most vulnerable operating system version of Windows ever. So if you go to the Windows Microsoft site, okay, every version will have corresponding vulnerabilities listed against it. So as an auditor, you should understand the importance of version control. Why? Say, for example, today HDFC Bank has appointed me to conduct an audit. When I went, the version operating system of Windows was version 11. But during the period of audit, for 8 months, they were running on Windows 10. So if you don't know what are the vulnerabilities, you will end up auditing version 11 only for the period of 4 months. And you may not even evaluate the risks associated with version 10. Same happens with the application. So Tally came up with version 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Over a period of time, now Tally is somewhere around 11 or 12. So 3.4, 4.3, 5.1, 6 point whatever, every version would have some issues. And before changing the version, some steps have to be followed. You can't just migrate your application to a new platform. Like those who have upgraded their machines from Windows 10 to 11, for a few days, many applications would behave erratically. They may not behave properly. So if you don't have a backup, if you don't have proper documentation, if you do not have proper control on your data, it will be very difficult to roll back. So you have to check whether there is any rollback mechanism available or not. Yeah. Then a very important concept comes user management, creating a user. Who are the users? Users are the people who work in the organization. Yeah, all employees. So every time you log in into any application, you put your ID and password. So to log in into my laptop, I put a login into password. To log in into Tally, login ID password. To open my Outlook, login ID password. So I have to create a user. I have to give them the privileges. Like if I enter into Tally, what is my designation? If I'm a data entry operator, am I supposed to see financial statements? So my privileges are disabled. If I'm a head of finance, am I supposed to record an entry? So when I log in as a head of finance, my data entry screen will be disabled, but reports will be enabled. So when you assign the rights, need to know, need to have, our principle of least privileges has to be followed. And finally, deleting the user. So these are the stages of creation of a user management. Sorry, these are the stages of user management. Then comes the software infrastructure. So if you see on the outer circle is a user. User only interacts with the inner circle, which is application. Application interacts with the third circle, which is system software. And finally comes the hardware. So if you look at the bottom pyramid, it's hardware. Then comes the system software. Then comes the application software, and then comes the user. So this understanding you should have. Okay, system software's classic example is your operating system, your drivers. When you buy a printer, it requires a driver. When you buy a Wi-Fi router, it requires a driver. Driver is an application that manages the hardware. Okay, so for a printer to work properly, for a printer to configure some options, you need that software from the vendor. Yeah. Then chapter 3 talks about software testing. In DISA, a lot of emphasis is given on testing. So questions relating to testing, you will see them often coming. So when you read module 4, please give a lot of emphasis on chapter 3. These are the types of testing, these are the approaches of testing, and these are the testing levels. So this is very simple. You can read and understand. I'll focus more over here. This is a bit difficult to understand. So white box testing, as the name suggests, we go through in depth. We evaluate the algorithm. We look at the pseudocodes. We look at the flow charts. We look at the logics of the software and their integration with the other components. So it is more technical in nature. It requires a lot of knowledge of technology. We being chartered, we are not technologically sound, so we majorly rely on black box testing. What is black box testing? Like I entered a transaction in Tally and I looked at the output. If the output is correct, I assume that the algorithm who's processing the data, processing my entry is correct. So if the output is correct, I would conclude that the system is working correctly. And gray box is like a combination of the two. Yeah. Similarly, in software, there are different testings that happens. Please remember one key thing. UAT is the only testing which is done by the end user who is going to use the software or that application. Okay. It is like a test drive by the end consumer. But before the consumer take the test drive, before the car comes onto the road and available in the vendor showroom, yeah, it goes through various tests in the laboratory, in the production facility. So when you're reading this, understand that other than UAT, every other sort of a test is done by the IT team, no user involvement. Of course, users are invited, okay, to seek their feedback or to observe the test, okay. But real testing of the final product is done by UAT, and until the UAT is done, the software is not moved to the live or the production is not moved to the production live environment. Okay, so it is like unless your car is tested on all the safety levels, all the parameters, it is not made available to the public. So system testing, unit testing, integration testing, so many testing are there. All this happens beforehand, and it is done by the team who is developing the software. Okay. Then there are certain other concepts given in module 4, like data, databases, RDBMS, primary key, foreign key. What is foreign key? Primary key of any other table. What is RDBMS? 2 or more databases linked with each other. This is the philosophy of any largely integrated module-based software available today. And why you need to remember all this and understand all this is inevitable. This is the bare minimum you should know, because today entire world is recording the data in database format. You name any software available in the market, the backend is database. So it is very important for you to understand the components, and in exam also thereby we give focus on these terms. So when you read thoroughly everything about DBMS. Then there are a lot of backup strategies which are given. Few questions might occasionally come on that, like father, grandfather, incremental, so on and so forth. So I'm not going into that detail. We don't have enough time, and that's not the intention also for me to kind of take you through that at this moment. But I'm saying these are the key concepts that you should go through thoroughly. Okay. Patch management is again one of the effective way of ensuring that all the vulnerabilities which are identified in the version are taken care of. So every patch management either plugs the gap or brings in more efficiency or new feature or something like that in your existing software or hardware. Module 4, Chapter 4 talks about incident handling and response. So you should know what is an incident, okay? And an incident is nothing but a deviation from the normal operation of a process. Anything which is not following the policies, procedures, and norm is called incident. If this is a restricted area and some intruder comes in, it's an incident. Yeah. If after 6 o'clock, internet should be disabled, port 80 of the employees should be disabled. Nobody should be allowed to access internet after office hours. If some employees are able to, that's an incident. Okay. Normal operations may hamper due to natural or man-made cause. So this is also a part of incident. Now, when an incident of this happens, you have to follow all these steps. You have to identify the incident, prepare the report for incident, identify, contain, immediately immediately try to reduce the impact of that incident. It's like fire. We immediately, try to control the fire so that it doesn't spread. And to the extent possible, you can eradicate. So if the virus came in, try to immediately remove and prevent spreading of the virus. So preventing the spread of the virus is containment, removing is eradication. Then recovery. If the virus has impacted some of the networks or applications, try to bring them to normal. Follow up. Follow up is like a root cause analysis. What happened? How happened? Which control failed? How this could have happened? Something like this. Then document all your learnings. Yeah. And this is how the incident is taken care of. So considering the time, I think we are going well, pretty much within the time. We have got 10 minutes to cover module 5. Pardon me if I take 5 more minutes. Yeah, because module 5 might take 15 minutes. So module 5 has got 5 chapters. Yeah. To be very frank, I'll just give you a tip. Of the 5 chapters, chapter 3, 4, and 5 are more easy to understand. They are specific controls that we have put it into the module, and what is the objective of those controls is also stated. So understanding the physical and logical access control is very easy. So because this module has a highest weightage of 22%, 45 odd questions will come from it. If you thoroughly go through chapter 3 and 4, you will be able to get pretty good marks in this. Chapter 5 is a bit tough because it talks about network, something which you might not have seen or audited. So you have to imagine or kind of visualize. And our brain works very fast and connects to the things which we have seen. Physical and logical access controls are the ones which you have used. Like biometrics on your phone is a logical access control. There are password, dual factor authentication, hardware locks, physical locks, swipe cards. These are all physical access controls. Yeah, sprinklers, smoke detectors, motion detectors. These are the things which you can connect. You may have it installed in your offices or homes or society, CCTV cameras. So these are the things you can connect easily. So when you read module 5 and if you're running short of time, this is the shortcut to clear your coverage in module 5. Yeah, barring chapter 5, in the order 3 and 4 are the easiest one. 1 and 2, there are certain concepts which you need time, and 5 is a bit tough. So module 5 talks about risk response, and everybody knows risk every business has to handle. So either you can avoid the risk, you can transfer by taking insurance or by outsourcing it or by going to the cloud. Moving to cloud is a good approach to transfer the risk. Okay. You can accept the risk or you can mitigate the risk. 90% of the organization, they follow this approach. What do I mean by mitigate? You have a corresponding controls to bring down the risk impact. Yeah. Then there are certain models given to you for threat modeling. These are to identify your risk appetite and your risk tolerance. So how much is the risk your 5 components carry? You have to evaluate and put a number or a severity against it. You can follow this threat modeling tools. So there are 3 which we have given. This is the most popular for web application security. And these are the ones that I have just given you for example, for a reference here, that they cater to different categories of risk and their description. Okay. So these are the mechanisms which will tell you that, hey, look, in your 5 components that you have deployed in your business, this is the risk that they carry. If it is within your appetite, then no need to have any risk response. But we are not that fortunate. It is always more than the risk appetite. So we have to mitigate them. We have to kind of put some controls to reduce that within the tolerance level. This is very easy. You can kind of quickly go through it. What are the different types of controls? When I say easy, understanding wise easy, but when the question comes, the drafting is complicated. So you have to identify the keyword, like the example that I gave you. If the word is minimized, the answer was corrective. If I remove the word minimize, answer becomes detective. So although you have a conceptual clarity on this, but if you are unable to detect keyword, you might go wrong. Here again, What is the role of an auditor? Auditor has to evaluate the controls, whether control exists, it is effective, and it existed throughout the period of audit. These are the three things that you check. And what is the outcome? Your outcome could be that the control exists, it is very effective, so very high rating. Control exists, effective, the high rating. Control exists, but at times it is not effective, moderate rating. Control exists, but it is majority of the time not effective, and control doesn't exist. So how is the next step goes? If your control is very high, the probability of risk event happening is low. So your sample size can be low. If your control is moderate or a low, probability of risk happening is very high, and therefore your sample size should be very high. And if the control is negligible, there's a high probability that your systems are compromised already. And this is the role of yours as an IS auditor in risk assessment. So this is chapter 1. Chapter 2, if I were to invest into security, what are the critical success factors? Security is an afterthought in most of the Indian organizations. Something wrong happens and then we wake up. Okay. If your phone gets, kind of hacked, then you install antivirus in it. If your machine gets hacked, then you invest money into antivirus. It's not like that. You have to think well in advance. Like in module 3, security is also considered as part of the development while you're developing any software or infrastructure or an architecture. So security is equally given importance today. Okay. So critical success factors for implementing security control is that security should be aligned with the business objective. Some things which needs higher level of security, more level of security should be put in. Some things which are like for public use or for available in a public domain, less security to be applied. Very important is tone at the top. So there'll be a case study sort of a questions. You have to identify that which option is correct based on this understanding. So if the tone at the top is good, then the investment in the security, the budget for the security investment is very high. If the tone at the top thinks that, no, we are okay, our tolerance is very high, our appetite is high, we will not put any control, dekha jayega jo hoga. If that's the kind of an attitude, then budget will be less. Any organization which is adopting best practice like ISO COBIT, which is there in module 1 and 2, the probability of risk happening is very less. So these organizations are appreciated well in the industry. They're looked upon with dignity in the industry. Yeah. So these are some of the basic principles like segregation of duties, 4I maker checker, 6 eyes, which is there in Swift, maker checker authorizer, rotation of duties. In bank, you might see that key roles are rotated. Key man policy. Key man policy says that 2 or more senior executives should not travel together, should not be at one place, because if things go wrong, if there is something wrong, if key people die in the business, then the continuity of the business is in question. So all key decision makers will never assemble in one place. This has to be avoided. Then there's a very thorough, detailed understanding you have to gather on all the policies stated in module 5. Yeah, there'll be a lot of security policies like BYOD policy, then program license policies that we have. You have, policies on encryption standards. So many policies which we have. Minimum acceptable use policy, internet policy, email policy, password policy. Yeah, all those you have to go through. And then the information is classified based on the importance. So if something is very important to me, that information I will protect the most. So I'll classify that as confidential. So my IT team puts more control over it. So this is a understanding of this. Chapter 3 talks about physical and environmental control, which I've already talked about. So have a look at this slide. These are the things. One more important thing that most of the participant misses out is that when I say physical security, do not only consider that physical security means my offices, my server room, where my data is stored. It also includes your ventilation and cooling infrastructure. Okay. So we think how ACs are connected with my IT infrastructure. it plays a significant role. Your server is generating or emitting heat 24/7. It is up and running 365 days. So unless your cooling system is supporting to maintain the temperature, your performance of the server may deteriorate. So this is often an ignored area. And when the question comes, participants can't understand because they can't connect the question that this relates to physical security. And because of that, they fail to answer the questions correctly. Same goes with electricity. So all power and electricity and ventilation and cooling related controls are part of physical security. You please remember this. There are certain man-made threats. There are certain natural threats. How to deal with them? You can go through the module chapter 3. This is important because few questions do come out of it. Yeah, like if it's a manned facility, which sort of fire extinguisher needs to be applied? Yeah, for electricity, if there's a humid environment, what sort of controls to put in? So questions around that might come. And the questions around MTBF, mean time between failure. So longer is better. What is mean time between failure? Today my server failed. When next my server failed? If it failed after 1 year, 2 year, fine. But if it failed again after 1 month, again after 1 week, then something is wrong in my controls. So MTBF, longer is better. MTTR, mean time to repair. So after the incident or a risk event has happened, if my server is out, my server is down, how much time it has taken to come to the restore level? How much time it has come to the original level? Meaning how much time it took to recover or repair. So lower is the better. So if my downtime is 10 minutes, I have to mandatorily recover within the 10 minutes. So if my server recovered within 2 minutes, fine. If it has taken 15 minutes, it's bad. So these are the criteria to evaluate. Then this is all logical access, you know better. I need not dwell into it. Only thing you need to remember is this. Access control mechanism always follow this sequence in this order. First, you have to put user ID, which is called identification. So you have to remember that what is ID? Identification, it is ID. Take this first second character. Any question that revolves around user ID, look for the option that talks about identification control. Then comes authentication, which is like password or 4-digit OTP, something like that. Or swipe card if it's a physical infrastructure. And authorization is to deal with privileges. Like the example I gave, if I'm a data entry operator, I'll only have access to the data entry module. If I am a manager, I have more privileges. Then file permissions like read and write, access to network, access to operating system, applications, databases, it all depends upon what is your role in the organization. And finally, Active Directory and the Kerberos. These are the softwares which maintains the list of the users and their privileges. So Active Directory is from the Microsoft and Kerberos is a ticket generated software. So it creates a very detailed log. Every time you ask for the privilege that I want an access to Tally, I want an access to customer relationship management software, I want an access to this network, I want an access to this port, Kerberos will generate a ticket and will maintain the log of the access provided to the user. It is very handy. It's a detective control, helps you during audit. Finally, we come to the chapter 5, which is network security control. So what is the purpose of a network? What is network? When two or more devices which are capable of communicating by exchanging, storing, transmitting information, a network is said to have been formed. So for a successful network, for a successful exchange of information, you need to have connection. So connection could be wired connection or a wireless connection between two devices. Then they should be able to exchange information in a language. Like I'm speaking with you in English, and if I start speaking in Gujarati or some vernacular language, many of you may not understand. So the purpose of exchanging the information will be defeated. So both the machines which is exchanging the information should have a language. Then they should follow protocol. I just gave you an example. What is protocol? Rules for exchanging the information. And finally, all this exchange of information should be secured environment. It should be secured. Yeah. Then there are concepts of network security. How can I secure my network? by classifying my network into different zones. So if one network zone is attacked, my other zones can be contained and the attack can be eradicated from the uh, zone which is already attacked. So zoning is basically to prevent a complete failure. Okay. So it's like a backup. If something goes wrong in one, my other network is safe. Redundancy means sometimes you have to keep redundancy, extra facility, like two internet service provider, two electricity service provider. So if one internet service provider like Zio fails, then I can, hope on to Airtel or a Vodafone. Or if Reliance electricity service fails, I can go and, avail the services of government electricity service providers. All this happens to eliminate single point of failure. Now, important, whenever it comes cryptography, you have to associate it with confidentiality. When it comes to hash, you have to associate it with integrity, right? Then these are other concepts you have to go through it. Okay, these are important concepts of module 5, chapter 5. Okay. Finally, please have confidence in you. Don't forget that you are a chartered accountant. We are less than 0.001% of the entire population of India. So if you can crack CA exam, this is nothing against that. Yeah. So have a confidence within you, believe in you, and go with the positive mindset. All the very best. This is my email ID. If you have any questions, reach out to me, shout out to me. I would be more than happy to help you. So thank you very much. Wish you all the very best. Over to you, Renu. Any questions, please let me know.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, Renu. Loud and clear.
That's loud and clear. And your deliberation was very loud and clear.
Thank you.
Perfect. It's very much perfect. I was getting calls from so many members कि सर को छुपा के कहाँ रखा हुआ है, पूछो सर कहाँ से belong करते हैं.
Well, friends, I am from Mumbai, and I am from Mumbai.
And so you are in practice?
Yes, ma'am, I am in practice, and I'm a faculty for DISA course. I think many of participants here could have attended my session. It's been many years I'm taking sessions for DISA and FAFP.
Sir, so kindly share your PPT on the email shared in the chat.
Sure, ma'am.
Sir,
and I wish everyone a good success. Any questions if you have?
There is no question. Everyone is extending sincere thanks from the bottom of heart.
My kind wishes to all of you, and hope that my effort in pulling out this PPT would help them in working in the right direction and clearing the exam.
Sir, I always convey one thing to all the faculties from this platform. Those we are really indebted to the valuable assets. What is the definition of valuable asset? You people who is sparing their precious time and without any concern, without any interior selfish motive, sitting here for 3 hours, deliberating, and very happy to see the face. Your face so delighted to see, to share their knowledge. That is really, really fantastic, sir. Hats off to you, sir.
See, ma'am, these nice compliments keeps us moving, and they are priceless, Money can't give this happiness, the kind of response which comes from the participant, that keeps us moving. And if we can kind of make any change and bring them success, that's a winning for us. This is like giving back to society, isn't it?
That's
so this feeling is awesome. Yeah.
Rainwater system.
So you are there since 3 hours. So thanks to you for organizing this and spending your time for the benefit of the participants. So a round of applause for you also, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Mujhe applaud nahi, I need only blessing. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much to all participants for patient listening, and have a blessed life ahead. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.